hardly be important as the campaigns officially begin tomorrow. Nigeria has been here before. In 2015, the country stood on a knife edge. The election was fiercely contested. Tensions were high, and then President Goodluck Jonathan faced the possibility of losing power. He ultimately conceded to then former President Muhammadu Buhari, a decision widely regarded as crucial in preventing the elections from degenerating into a wider crisis. One of my guests this afternoon was there inside that moment and witnessed the tensions and conversations that preceded that historic concession. So as we witness another peace accord today, perhaps the question will not simply be, will they sign? The larger question is, what happens when the stakes become real? When the polls are closed, when the numbers are tight, when victory is slipping away, when supporters are angry, when social media is ablaze, when a candidate believes that the process has been unfair, will our political leaders choose peace of the nation over the desperation of political victory? This is our discussion this afternoon in this studio, open at the venue of the first signing of the National Peace Accord, to commit political parties and candidates to issue-based campaigns ahead of the general elections. But there is a lot happening at this venue, and I'm going to be going over to our correspondent, Victoria Longjohn, who will give us a feel of what is happening in the venue before I come to our I almost said candidates, but yes, to our guests, to introduce them and also ask them a few questions. But over now to you, Victoria, to give us a feel of what is actually happening here at the International Conference Center.
Well, rightly said, Malpe. All is now set for the National Peace Accord, where political parties and candidates will be committing to issue-based campaigns ahead of the 2027 general elections. The hall is almost packed full, and guests are beginning to arrive in their numbers. Right now in the hall, we have the APC chairman, Mr. Netawe Yulwata. We also have Archbishop John Cardinal Onaikon. We also have Bishop Kuka in the hall. We also have the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. John Akume, the presidential candidate of the AAC, Mr. Omoyele Shore, just walked into the hall. We're also expecting more high-profile arrivals in the course of this event. We understand that President Bola Tinubu will be attending this event. Would also be the attendance of other political and party leaders. We're also expecting the arrival of the INEC chairman, the arrival of representatives of security agencies. We're also expecting local and international observers, both from Nigeria and outside the country, members of the National Peace Committee, members of the Kuka Foundation, and of course every other stakeholder who is central to today's event.
Well, thank you very much for that overview, Victoria, in terms of the people that we're expecting and the people already on the ground. But I might as well bring you to the studio and tell you those that I currently have on the ground in the studio. Right here with me to my immediate right is Osita Chidoka, former Minister of Aviation and the Chancellor of the Athena Center. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We also have the pleasure of having Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, and also the convener of the National Peace Committee. Thank you so much for joining us, Your Lordship.
As always, thank you, Malpe.
So let me start with you, Bishop, because you are the convener of this, and this was done in 2015, 2019, 2023, and now about to start in 2027. What have you learned from these other signings that have happened that you're hoping will be different in 2027?
Well, I have witnessed the growth in enthusiasm, in part because I think even the title of the Peace Committee was the National Peace Committee for the 2015 elections. That's what the founders of this idea when the late Kofi Annan, of blessed memory, asked me to do this. What we had as a recommendation from the inter-party conference that was chaired by what's his name, Senator Benobi. So the idea was for us to just deal with the 2015 elections. And we thought when we finished the 2015 elections, we decided to just sound out people's opinion. And to our greatest shock, from the media, civil society, we went to see the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Senate President, President Jonathan, all the way up to President Buhari. And somehow everybody seemed quite enthusiastic that the Peace Committee should not dissolve itself, because we thought everybody can now go back home. And that's why we're here today. So I think we're responding actually to the momentum that has been building over a period of time.
So what have you noticed from 2015, 2019, that needed to be improved upon as we enter 2027?
I think two things. The first is that the lack of clarity as to the consequences of breaking the law, let me put it that way. And then, of course, the lack of understanding of what the work of the Peace Committee really is. It's not a statutory body. It doesn't have powers to compel anybody to act one way or the other. All we do is just give people a bit of confidence and insist, that the game piece is very important. So I think what has happened and what needs to happen, and I think a bit of that is happening, but perhaps we need to redesign method of engagement, whether media or otherwise. We have at the center, for example, I think we have about 26 peace committees spread across the states in Nigeria, largely because of the hunger and the appetite of people who just want to become agents in the struggle for peace, so that this doesn't become like ordinary Nigerians are just spectators in the drama that people are acting on their behalf, namely the actors. So I think what has happened and what we need to sharpen, for example, is the consciousness of the people and gradually becoming agents in their own future, and then learning how to engage, both the politicians themselves and then the conditions around different communities that predispose people to this kind of violence. Because the violence we see happens after elections, during elections, but the challenge for us is to make peace building part and parcel of our national and community architecture.
So quite a number of things to ponder on, but let me come to you, and I want you to take us back to that night in 2015 when it became apparent that President Goodluck Jonathan was losing the general elections. What was the mood like, and what were the voices in the room at that particular point in time?
Time, almost 24 hours. From the moment President Jonathan called me, and I came back from the east. He called I came back from the east. I was there to vote, so I rushed back to Abuja, and I came in the morning, and everywhere was quiet. I got to the villa, everywhere was quiet, and I thought this was odd. But when I got in and saw him, people were still running around, results were still coming. But when we sat privately, he told me we had lost the election. And I said, so what do we do? He said he will accept it. That was his first reaction. And I said, oh wow, that's good. I mean, that's progress for Nigeria. But there are still 2-3 states to go to the final result. He said, yes, but we've heard the result. So he said I should draft a speech for him and that he will concede. So I went in, drafted and brought it back. I think I gave it to Ruben Abati, his media people, to now put it in his way, in their villa way. But the speech started with, I had just called General Muhammadu Buhari and congratulated him. Then the argument became, should he say that? And some people said, no, he shouldn't say that. That will preclude him from going to court if we see any anomalies with the election. So I then called the Attorney General then, Mohammed Bello Adoke, and said, please come on. Things are changing here. And all of a sudden the mood, was progressively getting hotter. one of our colleagues had gone to the ICC and started the issue of we no agree. Then Attorney General came and I said, is it true that if we write this in the speech, that it will preclude him from going to court? Attorney General said, no. Anything you want to file in court, you file in court. Whatever you say outside does not affect whatever happens in court. That even after all, President Yar'Adua said the election that brought him was faulty, and yet still went and defended the election in court. So there is no problem with that. And that kind of calmed down President Jonathan. But the mood was now shifting towards, let's pursue this a little. Then Dudafa, his SA, and I've been going back and forth with him, talking back and forth with him, now went and called President Buhari, because that was the agreement, that he should speak to Buhari. And my argument was, if you do this after the final results are announced, the country will have shifted to Buhari. But before the final results, you maintain that you take the, kind of take the wind out of the sail. You control the narrative. So he then called President Buhari. He went in, spoke to him, came out, and I said, should I tweet this to the world that you've spoken to him? He said, yes. So I tweeted at 5:17. I remember precisely that he has called President General Muhammad Buhari. And that de-escalated the mood that was in the room already. Because a few people who I remember very well were already saying we should not accept, this is what should be done, that should be done. But after he made that call, which was very brave of him and bold of him at that time, and the decision was purely his. He told me from the first night, I will accept the result. What has happened, and I will move on. So I think it was a high watermark in Nigeria's electoral process that the election was deemed credible enough for both the president to accept, a president who lost, and more importantly, the number of court cases in that election declined dramatically. Of course, subsequent years we had issues with the elections, but that was the beginning of the process we're enjoying now.
You said something very significant about, how he already made up his mind to accept the results, and how the process itself was credible enough for both parties to accept the result. How critical, in your opinion, do you think that the process needs to be for parties to be able to respect whatever it is they sign here today?
It's an important part of that process. The process has to be credible. And if we take Osun election that just happened now, the whole Nigeria was watching. I said something on TV a day ago that the rise of AI made it possible for us to crawl the INEC site and collect the results ahead of the collation centers. Athena Center had the result, Yaga had it, their ERAD, Data Fight had it. About 5 or 6 institutions who do this election data thing all had the results faster than INEC collation. So the mystery, the darkness around the election collation period has been partly removed by technology. But more important is a significant decision INEC took in this election. I think they took it in Ekiti and then they deepened it here. That decision to enter the result that was on the EC8A into the BVAS. Now, you don't just snap the EC8A, you actually enter it in the e-collation of the BVAS. And that e-collation will not allow you to enter more results than accredited, because the BVAS is the custodian of the accredited. So it doesn't allow you to enter more results. That has significantly improved the process at the polling unit. What is remaining, and I believe that signing this accord today should also go out with that message. What is remaining is that INEC must commit to upload the results in the EC8B. That is the word collation. The word collation is the only point where the collation officer has the power to determine which election from the polling unit goes into the result or is removed. Because he needs to check the EC8A against the BVAS accreditation. He needs to check against the E40G in case of violence or there was no election. That is the moment the collation officer makes that call. So the peace committee should ask INEC as part of that process, and I know they are not into that process, but it should be a message sent out. INEC has made tremendous progress. The technology is working. We have all accepted that the technology is working. What we now need is visibility to what happens at the collation center. Once INEC can upload that result, that closes the current loop, where people are still rushing to collation centers to alter results. So we need to have that. And INEC also needs to be accountable. In the Osun election, from 8:48 p.m. till about 11:35, results stopped coming. 471 results got stalled. INEC should explain what happened in that 2 hours, because the expectation is that the IREV should all be done before collation starts. So they need to come forth with information. This is what happened in this. With that process, I believe that those signing today, nobody should be bothering going to court, because it will be clear what has happened at the election.
Oh, my lord, you already said that, you do not have the power for enforcement. Essentially, this continues to remain a moral burden you're placing on the candidates. Is that correct?
I think so. But at the same time, ordinarily, we are more predisposed to do bad things as human beings. The essence of the law is to make sure that, you don't get away with it. Moral suasion by itself is not enough. I mean, we're all reading the Bible, we're all reading the Holy Quran. It has not stopped us from. So I think that critical to all of this is the need to sensitize ordinary citizens, because I think we often underrate the capacity of the ordinary citizen. The police says something, says something. But if we assume that this election is something that INEC is conducting the elections on our behalf, we therefore need to be sufficiently aware of what we can do and what we cannot do and how we can help in the process. So I see a lot of hope and a lot of future in terms of technology, because the truth of the matter is that manipulation, from the Latin word manus, that is hand, anything that you are holding with your hand is subject to, and once all of this goes to science and technology, even the criminal becomes hopeless. So, for example, if you're driving and you see a traffic light, and the reason why the traffic lights turn and you can be penalized is there's nothing you can do about it. So, for me, the more technology is injected into all of this, the less the capacity for those who want to do evil to do so. And I think we must also agree that we've made measurable progress in terms of, for the first years, people's obsession was with stealing ballot boxes. Now, it doesn't matter whether you hire giants as your agent. They don't have, that's not going to be the problem. So, along with that will come the flip side, which is ordinary Nigerians need to see a qualitative and a measurable improvement in the quality of their lives. That we are not just handing you our votes and then you take the votes and run with them. So, and I keep telling our politicians, politics is a noble game. You can create a bit of nobility around this, but we didn't vote for you to be happy on our behalf. So I think people's confidence will increase as long as they can see a mirror image of the fact that their lives are changing. And I think the very fact that we're having all these elections 27 years later, we're still here, is a clear testimony that ordinary Nigerians love democracy. The challenge for the ruling class is to reward them. And you reward them by doing good and making them trust the system.
It's interesting that we have the Inspector General of Police going to be a part of the dignitaries expected here today, as well as the Supreme Court, not Supreme Court now, the Chief Justice of Nigeria is also going to be here as well. What extraction are you hoping to have from these dignitaries who are also a part? They're not politicians, but they also, form a part of the bastion of people whom you expect will be able to hold these leaders to account. From what we understand, it's not just the presidential signing. Governorship candidates are also here today. National Assembly members are also here today. What are your expectations of these institutions, the heads of these institutions that you have invited?
You see, the first thing is that I think if you go back to the President Jonathan issue, it is that in the final analysis is the quality of individuals you are dealing with, their sense of what is right and what is wrong. Ordinarily, you measure the progress of democracy by how few the steps are to the judiciary. Because ordinary Nigerians cannot be voting, and then it's the judiciary that takes the final decision. But the courts are there, they are not compelling people to come. But I think that we can measure our progress by the disposition of Nigerians, their willingness to accept that, look, as Jonathan said, if it goes this way, I'm going to accept the results. Now, this is the first accord. The second accord, which comes at the end, is to say we are ready to accept the results of these elections if they are free, fair, and credible. And I think it's also important that Nigerians do not become oblivious, because we're not just spectators here, we're witnesses. And so you're not going to stop people from going to court, but we can actually also begin to gather enough momentum to say, look, this is what you promised. Okay, and because then the courts will also learn how to punish those who go with frivolous cases, seeking what they consider to be validation from the courts.
How easy is it? Because this first signing is to hold the candidates and their political parties to account, to issue-based campaigns. That is what you're trying to commit them to. How easy do you think that is going to be ahead of the 2027 elections, especially when you also consider the influence and the impact of social media?
I think that's sizable progress in terms of looking at the turnout in Osun. Let's use that as another example. Over 1 million people came out to vote out of 2.3 million registered voters. Before the election, the registered voters grew by about 19%. And if you look at over 2022, and if you look at the number of votes, people who came out to vote, it grew again about 20% over the last time. So meaning that there is more engagement. Now, at the scale of 1 million people voting, vote buying and rigging the election becomes expensive. The infrastructure for that becomes expensive. So you have no choice but to go back to issues. Once people see that there is going to be large voter turnout and that manipulating the election will not be easy, you will have significant shift to an issues-based campaign. Because principally two things will occur here. The incumbent will be defending his records in an election. The incumbent will defend his record. The opposition is offering change from where we are today. So you need to explain to the people why you need to go from where we are today to a better place. Easier said, but at least I believe that learning from the number of voters that came out, and if we have 40% voter turnout in 2027, that will significantly bring our votes to about almost 50-something million. Now, think about it. How do you buy 5,000 naira or even 2,000 naira for 50 million people? It becomes just impossible. So I think that signing this accord, together with a credible election, the prospect of a credible election, it will move people to issues in this election, trying to convince people about why they have to vote for them.
It's interesting that Osun continues to come up as an example, of what should be in terms of election day practices. But pre the election, we recorded one or two instances where the rhetoric was very disappointing. And this came from elected officials, people who are known government officials. Till date, we haven't quite seen sufficient action on that particular rhetoric, at least as much as Nigerian people would like. What would you have loved to see in such an instance?
Well, look, I think I want to first of all, congratulate Governor Adeleke. But he impressed me by his doggedness, but also his ability to shout and to cry. If my phone were here, if I show you the number of telephone calls and my communication with him from the signing of that peace act, he remained doggedly engaged. The chairman had already traveled, but he kept right up to Friday night. Governor Adeleke was still raising the issues that were on the ground. True or false? Luckily for me, I had access to the Inspector General of Police, and this is where those things are very important. There was a triangular conversation going on. He would complain to me, I'll pass the complaint over to the IG. And in fairness to the IG, he acted on some of those issues. So I think what is most critical is ordinary citizens must also learn to assert their rights. And I think even the people with dubious intentions, even an armed robber can tell where it's going to be dangerous for him to rob. So I think that we learn from Oshun the fact that no matter how much you try, people's will always triumph. I mean, the 3 times that we were in Oshun, I picked up the vibes, and I sensed that the man himself was popular as far as ordinary people on the ground were concerned. And we saw a bit of that back to back, in the last 3 elections.
Let's talk about losing, because it's one thing to win. I mean, you witnessed the candidate who lost, the man in power who lost. That certainly was not easy. Is there anything in what the candidates are signing today that prescribes what they must do in the event that they lose?
Well, first of all, it depends on how you lose, but also in the final analysis, it really depends on the quality and the caliber of person you're dealing with. I think Jonathan had an advantage, and maybe I'm wrong, but Jonathan had the advantage of being, let me say, not an Abuja boy. He also had the advantage of being from a minority background. So he did, because if Jonathan were, let's say, let me use the word, a Yoruba man, an Igbo man, or a Hausa man, the reaction, the crowd of people that would have expected that this is our turn, you can't let us down, the pressure would have been quite monumental on him. Had he stayed in Abuja long enough, and then let me put it that way, and affected a broad spectrum of people, as you saw, for example, with the case of Yaradua, that even at the last minute, nobody knew whether the man was dead or alive. There was still this desperation with making sure that nothing happened. So very often, if you do not have enough baggage behind you, you can take certain moral decisions. But if it comes to a point in which people expect that you are our representative, we can't let you go, that's when it becomes very difficult. But in the final analysis, the quality of your character and your personal commitment, because in the final analysis, nobody is going to hold you, to do what you don't want to do. So, and this is where, like I said, I don't know how else to put it, to encourage our politicians that politics is a noble game. You cannot force yourself to serve people who have said no, they don't want you to serve. And the courts are there. Again, as I said, there are other mechanisms for resolving some of these conflicts. But citizens, people seem convinced that there's no need going to the courts because terrible things have happened in the courts. Mm-hmm. But we must also come back to the fact that there's no alternative to the judicial process. So whereas we criticize the courts, and rightly so, but we must also encourage our people, that there's the only thing outside the court is jungle justice. So, but what I aspire for, what I wish for, is a situation in which there will be less trips to the courts, mm-hmm. and let our processes be resolved. And I think this is where other alternative mechanisms for resolving conflicts become important.
Okay, let me quickly ask you, Mr. Chidoka, if you also agree with what he said, that it was a little easier for President Goodluck Jonathan to accept his loss because of certain factors which conferred an advantage on him. Do you agree?
That's a good way of looking at it. But the more important issue is what he said, basic decency as a human being. I think some people are basically not decent. People say they don't want you, you lose an election, and you will drag down the house because you lost an election. I think that the key point my Lord made is that, it's a noble profession. People have to have basic decency. And I think President Jonathan had it. He had the attribute of shame. In Nigeria, shamelessness has become a political asset. So people who are shameless and go around doing whatever they think they need to do to seize and hold on to power. And we kind of indulge them, hail them. So when we come to this type of environment to sign this agreement, what it then means is that the expectation is that those who signed it will have the decency, the honor to say, this election has gone well, I did not win. And then, you can then go to court to challenge whatever you think is wrong, or accept the result and prepare for another time. So it is important.
Well, gentlemen, I know that we can go on and on with this discussion. I do not want to. I know you also have assignments within the main hall, so I'm going to tell you thank you for now. We might bring you on again. But Your Lordship, thank you so much. Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka is the Bishop of Sokoto Diocese and also the convener of the National Peace Committee. Mr. Osita Chidoka is was a former Minister of Aviation and also the Chancellor of the Athena Center, and he was there the night that President Goodluck Jonathan conceded the 2015 elections after he lost. He's been giving us a first-hand account of what transpired that evening. Gentlemen, thank you once more for coming on the program. Well, Victoria is still standing by to give us a feel of what is currently happening in the hall. It's a little fuller than the last time we spoke with her. Victoria, please bring us up to speed.
All right. Well, Malpe, there's still more arrivals in the hall, and as you can see, the presidential candidate of the NDC, Mr. Peter Obi, has just arrived, and he's about to grant an interview with reporters present here. But besides Mr. Peter Obi, who is already in the hall, we have Mr. Moele Shore and also more international and local election observers.
When I read my tweet, I said, let us not forget those who died in ensuring that the election in Osun was achieved the way it went. Now we should visit them, we should condole their families, and we should remain prayerful and conduct ourselves in a way that in our democracy, nobody needs to die for an election. It shouldn't be. It is painful. And I wish it never happened again.
Do you still believe in the process?
Well, because I want to change the process, I have to go through it. So I have to believe in it.
So, beyond the ceremonial signing, some are asking that politicians should actually live by the dictates of the content of the signing.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. No, we don't even need to sign this. We're seeking an office where we should be exemplary. You can't answer His Excellency without being an excellent person. So that process that will make you to answer His Excellency should be excellent. And the only way to do it is to conduct yourself properly.
One of your
what's your
just
biggest
called for
fear
a
about
justice
the
accord
27 elections?
as opposed to just signing a peace accord. They want a justice accord to be able to penalize those who go against the dictates of what they're signing here today. Do you agree with that?
Well, whatever it is, whether we call it justice accord or we call it peace accord, personal behavior is person any day, any time must reflect that affect.
So with what you have seen so far, sir, what is your biggest fear ahead of the 2027 election?
I don't have any fear except to say that, please, for the sake of the children of Nigeria, can we have an election where people's votes will count?
After signing accord, peace accord statement here today, if any party, anyone violates, what should be the punishment for them?
Well, the punishment is that Nigeria should not vote for them.
I love that. Hi, how are you?
Well, Mr. Peter Obi has just finished granting an interview with journalists where he called for issue-based campaigns as Nigeria officially gets into campaign season starting tomorrow. He's also called for the need for political presidential candidates to conduct themselves in a respectful manner with total respect for the offices they are seeking.
Right, thank you very much, Victoria. Thank you very much for your reporting. As we just saw there, the arrival of one of the presidential candidates, the candidate of the National Democratic Party, to the venue, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu International Conference Center. But we're back in the studio here where the conversation is still happening ahead of this National Peace Accord, which is to commit political parties and candidates to issue-based campaigns ahead of the general elections. And to further this conversation with me here in the studio, we have three gentlemen. I don't know when we're going to include the woman, but at least three gentlemen are here. And I'm going to be starting from my very far right. On my very far right is Samson Itodo, who is the Executive Director of Yaga Africa. Thank you. It's good to see you, Samson. And welcome back from Osun State.
Thank you very much.
Also here on the panel, we have Mr. Akingbolu, who is the Executive Director of Semesto. I'm sure that when we come to you, you'll tell us the full meaning of Semesto.
Right.
We also have Mr. Lanre Arogundade, who is here to my immediate right, is Executive Director, International Press Center. And I want to start with you, because how easy is this going to be? We know how campaigns generally are. We know how heated they get. We know how, well, some people say it's interesting, but we know how aggravated they can get. What role do you think the media has to play in all of this, in making sure that we stick with the issues?
Well, I think the role of the media is all about ensuring that the agenda that is set for the campaigns is a public interest agenda, a people's agenda. And that means that we need to go all out there to aggregate the opinions of Nigerian peoples in their different diversities, as women, as youths, as students, as elderly, in terms of what they really want government to do for them. And those are the issues we should challenge politicians with. I think the challenge we have over time is that we allow politicians to dictate what the issues are, sometimes bordering on things that do not even affect the people, personality clashes, claims, allegations, and the rest of them. And we tend to follow that trend, forgetting that we owe the public a major obligation to let them have informed opinion about what is going on.
Do you think media houses should be here today, also signing this accord? Because we're talking about the campaigns, and they play a great role in that, don't they?
Well, they do. Well, they don't have to be here because already there's a constitutional mandate. In any case, Section 22 of the Constitution says the media, the press, should monitor governance and hold the government accountable to the people, and that can be applied in the electoral, process. So in that context, it's about holding the politicians, the candidates, accountable to the people, which means what we need to constantly do is to draw their attention to the things that affect the people. Normally they will come and say, oh, we intend to do this, we intend to do that. But the things they say they want to do, are they actually what the people want them to do? As a matter of fact, are they even talking about those issues that affect the people? So whether you are looking at it in the context of the Constitution, in the context of even the code of ethics of our profession, I think we have that major obligation to ensure that it is the public interest, the people's interest, that dominates the campaigns. It will be tough, it will be difficult, because there are other things that go with it. The fact that politicians will come, they would advertise themselves, their campaigns, their rallies. But then we do have debates. We also have opportunities to interview them. We could send our reporters to do as many vox pops as possible to ensure that they do not escape from the real issues.
Okay, so that certainly is on the board. But let me come to you, sir. You have been monitoring the elections, and It's just very interesting that Osun has ended, the Osun governorship elections, and I've been hearing lots of that, being cited as an example. Is there anything that happened in the lead up to the Osun polls which you would like us to avoid in the 2027 general elections?
Oh, certainly. Several things. And it presented a very, very interesting development, which I think has lessons, for our country and for this period leading to the elections coming up in January and February 2027. The polarization was much. The information environment, so to speak, information space, was really, really toxic to the extent that as we approached the election day, people thought, oh, these polls, they are going to be really, really difficult. But we went out on election day, we're surprised. As early as 7 o'clock, people, had gathered in large numbers across polling units. The electoral officials came very early, and the process went smoothly everywhere. I mean, people were surprised, given what you had seen.
Yeah.
And the way things had gone, even going into violence, getting to the level, of killings and all of that. And on election day, things went very smoothly. I think it's a lesson. And we should give kudos to all the stakeholders, who made inputs into the process. Engaging all the stakeholders, including voters, including the electoral management body, security agencies, and all the rest, so that everybody, behaved. I mean, every institution, delivered, so to speak, on that day towards having a peaceful election. I think, it's something, that we should look at and do.
But you are speaking to things you do not want to see, and you're talking about the toxicity, the polarization,
yes,
ahead of the elections.
Yes.
How do you think we can avoid that as we're going? Or has the ground already been set for 2027?
Yes, things to do. It will mean that stakeholders, beginning with the media, and I expect the media, as my colleague has said, to take leadership in the information space. To be able to deal with this, meaning that once this thing is signed today, to engage with the process, monitoring, and then keep the political parties, and their candidates on track, and their spokespersons, and all of that, and even their members, to continue to track and put in mechanisms of saying, oh, you are falling out of line. This is not what you committed to during the signing process, and then ensure that that is done, that is sustained, the momentum is sustained up to election day. That will be very, very important. I don't expect that this signing will be done and then this media will just leave that. No, we will keep track, monitor, and ensure that they do not fall out of line.
The question is,
they walk the talk of today.
Well, that remains to be seen, because oftentimes they will say that the candidates themselves, oftentimes, largely, follow what it is that they have signed up to. But their supporters are not here. Their supporters oftentimes are the ones who commit the infractions. They're the ones who heighten the tension. So let me ask something. Do you think that there's anything we can do about the supporters of the candidates who are not the ones who are now putting pen to paper? Is there anything we can do to really hold them to account, to say this is what your principals have signed up to? You cannot go outside of this, since we're trying to keep it issues-based.
I think the onus really rests squarely with the principals, because these are people who use effective language to inform and influence the political behavior of their supporters. So the way that they engage this campaign process is really critical. So I think they should be held to account to an extent, because the rhetoric can influence how their supporters act. But I think that the supporters also need to know that there are certain acts that cross the red lines. And when you cross the red lines, there are consequences And when you're facing those consequences, your principle may not be there to save you. And so if you engage in hate speech, you engage in cyberbullying, you engage in all deviant behavior that undermines and compromises the information space, that is a consequence for it. I think that's the message that needs to be propagated strongly. But one of the things about this sort of peace accord around issue-based campaigns is we hope it will change the character and the nature of competition. What we saw in 2023 was just unacceptable. Even in the build-up to the Osun elections, where candidates and their spokesperson went on a rampage, exploiting all forms of incendiary messages, and it was deepening the divisions, and which Dr. Akimbolo calls polarization. I think that we must see this next election as a unifying factor, and political leaders need to observe restraint. So far, so good. I don't think that they have done that. And if they are committing to doing that, then it needs to trickle down from their principals to their communications staff to members of their campaigns. But if I know the Nigerian politicians very well, I doubt if they will be, if they would comply with the commitments that they made to them, unless something else is done. And I think this is where we as the people, we need to rise and really condemn leaders when they try to propagate certain messages that undermine public safety.
And I think that's basically where people have continued to take issues with the peace accord that is signed, in the sense that it just remains a moral suasion. It does not really carry any consequence, so to speak. If you breach it, for instance, it's unclear. It doesn't say that it can do anything to you or that there are any consequences for it. So how do you think that we really need to get to a point where we move beyond moral suasion to political consequences? If you do believe that, how do we navigate that?
Well, I think that can be done in a number of ways. The first is to ensure that we call them out when they violate this. In other words, I would expect each news medium, each media organization to develop a kind of checklist, because we know the parties that are signing these accord, or the parties that we sign, and once they do that, we need to now have our own checklist when there are violations, to say that these parties' presidential candidates did sign this peace accord, but the spokespersons, or in the course of their campaign, they're engaging in violent rhetoric, which is not acceptable. That way, we're going beyond moral suasion to kind of invoke the power of the society to call them to order. And the more we do that, the more they are likely to know that they're being watched and they cannot get away with anything. So if we look at the example of Osun State, with which you started with Dr. Akimbolo, we knew that a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria literally called on people, to engage in reprisal, attack, and he was called out. This thing went, viral, and at a stage he was saying, it was AI, and then people said it was not AI. We need the vigilance of the people in the circumstance, and I think for us in the media too. Let us remind ourselves that long before now, I think since 2018. We had developed for ourselves what we called the Nigerian Media Code of Election Coverage. And if you look at some of those guidelines, they are very instructive and they can help this process. It says, for example, that before you bring any politician or your live something, commit them that they would not embark on any form of hate speech or anything that can incite the people. And if they persist in doing that, you have the right to call off the program. So if they know to that there are respectable media organizations where they are antics would not be tolerated, they are likely to begin, to change. It's just for us to know that we have that power to do that. And I think it shouldn't just be for the media alone. The civil society too can also do that, because we are all part of the citizenry. In other words, they too can help us to keep tabs, because we can't be everywhere. They're going to be campaigning across the country. Governors will be campaigning, senators will be campaigning, the presidential candidates, will be campaigning, the governorship candidates. I think that would include, hate speech, threats to violence, and all those kind of things. If we have that, then maybe that will give us a kind of, will it be a judicial power now? I mean, that commission will have some power to sanction, to call people to order. Perhaps it's one thing that should still happen as part of our electoral, reform.
Let me ask you, are you worried about social media, Mr. Kimbulu?
Social
media?
Oh, sure. Because one of the things we have seen in the lead or the run-up to elections in Nigeria is the reality that political actors have decided to build huge infrastructures of hate communication in the online environment. Many of them invest, even in influencers, different kinds of proxies, to handle their communication. And in many cases, this is in the negative direction. It's very, very, very serious. And part of, what they do is also misinformation and disinformation. Apart from hate content, you also find misinformation and disinformation, which then creates a huge, huge problem in the online environment. It is a very serious one. And as my colleague was saying, there are existing frameworks that I think can be used to strengthen the work that National Peace Committee is doing, this signing of the accord. The Electoral Act, for example, already has provisions against issues like hate speech, against issues like violence. All of those, there are existing frameworks to deal with all of this. And what then that means is that the appropriate agencies, maybe regulatory agencies, they will then have to sit up, update their frameworks, and ensure that there is implementation as we go. Well, this will also be complemented with engagement, media literacy, and all of that. Engagement, as I said earlier on, with spokespersons of political parties. And when I say spokespersons, it's not just National Publicity Secretary. They have them at all the levels. Yeah. They come in various shapes and sizes. Some, will just be spokespersons. Some will be leader in a particular local government and all of that kind of thing, to build their capacity and to show them this is what the frameworks are saying at the national level, even at international level. The kind of speech, that came out in Oshu, for example, isn't quite much different from what happened in Rwanda. And the thing took those who were involved to International Criminal Court. Serious matter. So their capacity should be built such that they will understand that. Why also regulatory agencies should sit up to ensure that they implement what the laws say, what their regulations say. The National Broadcasting Commissions of this world, they should sit up. The INEC itself, NITDA, all of those regulatory agencies, to make sure that this kind of thing is engaged through regulatory implementation, regulatory practice on the field.
It's a thin line, Some people say it's a thin line between regulating and stifling. At what point how do you think the regulators can play their role in such a way that they are not seen as plain unfair?
Well, I think there are codes for existing normative and regulatory frameworks. For instance, the Peace Accord is a normative framework. There are certain norms that we are bound by, that there are red lines that we must not cross because we are humans and we belong to the society. And so once those lines are crossed, the consequence may be moral in nature. And what we are saying is, can you elevate this and make this more legal? I think that, yes, there's a fine and there's a thin line, but the law already makes some prescriptions. That you cannot, because you have access to tools of communication, propagate falsehood or propagate hate speech or make some inflammatory statements that undermine public
Your Excellencies,
because you have to strike a balance.
ladies and
And when you do
of
that,
course,
if there's
all
prima
of the
facie
citizens
evidence
tuning
that you
live
cross the
from
line,
here
for
in
instance,
Nigeria and across the
what
world,
Senator
a very warm welcome to the Bola Ahmed Tinubu
in Osun was
International
totally
Conference
unacceptable.
Center here
It's
in
not enough
Abuja
to
for the
invite
first
him and
sign
release him
of
on
the
bail.
National
He
Peace
should be
Accord.
prosecuted because
As
that
we
would
prepare to
serve
commence
as
this
a
very
deterrent,
important
to
event,
other
we'd like to
people who want to
ask all our
exploit it.
distinguished guests
Because
to
the
please
essence of
take
regulation
their seats.
is to ensure
We
that
ask
people don't
those
cross the line.
outside,
Because as a
those
society,
in the
we
VIP
must
section to
ensure that people are
kindly
bound
take their
by
seats
and so
in
you
the
can find
designated
people.
areas so we can
You
begin
can impose fines
this
on them.
very
Aside
crucial
imposing fines on them,
national
you can
assignment.
actually
And just a
prosecute them,
reminder
because
to reiterate
the
that
law
today is not
states
simply
to show public
another
safety.
event in our
But
political
when
calendar. No, it's not.
decide to
Today,
put laws on their hands,
Nigeria
then they have
pauses
to
to
face
make
the full
a very
The other thing I
important
just wanted
commitment.
to say,
A commitment
one of
that
the trends
political
that we
competition
see
must never
is that
become
politicians
a competition
and
in
now
violence.
using
So we'll begin in about
as
5
an
minutes
alibi
as we await the arrival of the
to
President. We
bypass
once again ask all our distinguished guests
There are
to
AI
take their
detection
seats
tools.
so we can begin.
Because if a
in
video
earnest.
shows up,
Thank you
and
very
then
much,
say,
and we
no, it was
apologize
AI
for starting large.
fabricated. It's
Thank
not
you
with
once
all
again.
these videos are AI fabricated. So I think politicians should know that it's no longer an excuse. It's obsolete to rely on tagging a video AI when it is not, because they are AI detection tools. And these are things that, whether they are regulators, whether they are those who are monitoring the information environment, need to keep in view. But at the end of the day, Malcolm, what do we want? We want a 2027 election information ecosystem that is clean and devoid of all these impurities, because it has impact on the legitimacy of the process. It has impact on how citizens show up at elections. But more importantly, it influences political behavior. And the dangers are too numerous for a polarized society like Nigeria to manage. And this is why this must be treated with all the seriousness that it deserves. And I hope that as these candidates make this commitment to focus on identity, to focus on policy, not identity, to focus on the issues, that they have the conscience to really respect and uphold the commitment that they made before the Nigerian people today.
Well, we know that any moment now we will be going to the arena. I'm sure that if our viewers had any disturbance, it's because at any moment now we will be going to the main arena for the main event. This is a side event, just prepping you for what the main event truly is about. And it's something that should concern all of us, something that should help all of us hold our leaders and the candidates in this forthcoming elections to account, which is to hold them to issues-based campaign and not, tugging at our fault lines, not tugging at our ethnicity, not tugging at religion. I wonder how possible that will be. Something really high we're asking for. But let me ask you, how important do you think it will be for the umpire to really do what it needs to? Because some people say that, look, if the umpire is fair, if the umpire does its work as it should, it makes it easier to hold the candidates to account, that they would generally behave themselves. How big a role do you think the umpire has to play in the middle of all of this?
I think the umpire, I guess we're talking about INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, has a very huge responsibility to take these issues further. First is that INEC has its guidelines for political parties and candidates, and it will be good for them, based on what happened in Osun and what would happen at this peace signing, to look at those guidelines to see whether they sufficiently capture some of these issues, because INEC is also a regulatory body, and there are things they can say to political parties that are not acceptable, and they can be part of institutions too that engage on the basis of this thing. So I would expect INEC itself to activate its communication system, do proper documentation, monitor campaigns the way they monitor the primaries, have their documentation so that on a periodic basis, and they do have these, I think, quarterly meetings with political parties. This should now form part of the agenda. INEC itself should be able to publish information on what they see have gone wrong in the course of the campaigns, and that would then be in line with what is happening here. If they do that, I think it will be very, very helpful. They have that role to play, because like Samson said, an inflammatory system can lead to the disruption of the elections, can lead to killings, could lead to attacks on even INEC personnel, because there are politicians who are desperate, who will tell deliberate lies, falsehood, which we call disinformation, against certain parties, even against INEC. We have situations where politicians are alleged that there's a collusion with INEC officials, they are thumbprinting somewhere. And in the past, in Anambra State and other parts of the country, we have seen attacks on INEC facilities. So it's also in the enlightened self-interest of INEC to take keen interest in this process.
Well, this is where we have to wrap up now. We understand that the main event is about to start. We have to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program this afternoon as we get set to witness the first signing, I like to call it the first phase of the signing of the National Peace Accord to commit political parties and candidates to issue-based campaigns ahead of the 2027 general elections. We've been speaking with Mr. Larry Arogundade, who is the Executive Director of International Press Center. Right in the middle has been Mr. Akingbulu, who is Executive Director of Semeso. You still didn't tell us what
it is. Center for Media and Society.
Media and Society, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
And to the far right has been Samson Itodo, who is Executive Director of Yaga Africa. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Well, this is where we now take you to the main hall. Perhaps Victoria might also have an update on those who have now arrived and how the event is about to commence. But should, in case that is not happening, we'll certainly take you to the main hall for the start of the event. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusuf. We'll be coming back to the studio after the event to at least get the impressions of what has happened here today. So please stay tuned and do give us your impressions of what is happening. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much. And just before we commence this all-important event, I'd like to ask the distinguished members of the press to kindly clear the forecourt. Kindly make your way to the designated press area so we can have some breathing space here. Once again, to my distinguished colleagues in the fourth estate of the realm, members of the press, I ask that we kindly clear the forecourt so we can have a breathing space and commence today's event. There is a designated press and media area, so kindly make your way to that space so we can begin in earnest. Thank you very much.
Don't worry, there's a tag in my bag. Is that it? Bring it back to
Yes, so human being, all of them. I don't collect money, I copy.
Nigeria, we
Hazo da mutane? Yanzu
na ji tunan da ake bayan
duba ne ko su kowa duba ne
su wasu mutanen ka?
na yi ne suna shara dole za su
kan da suka yi nan kama wani abu ne suna shara babu sami amma za su da dole ne kamar kan ba su sai nisa ba da inda su yi zai yi san lokacin da za a fara abin ba ka gama a cikin abokan ka kamar sun wani ya mana hoto kai ma daga bashin tura mutum da kai wani ya mutu a nan cikin kaga wani abokan ka sai ya mana hoto kai ma daga bashin tura wani ba zai cika ba
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to begin, and one more time, I'd like to ask distinguished members of the Fourth Republic, the Fourth Estate, I must say, members of the press, to kindly clear the forecourt and make your way to the designated press areas. We'll still have time for presses and interviews. This very solemn yet powerful event is about to begin in earnest. So to all our candidates, the chairman of the political parties, we ask that you please take your seat. We're going to begin in the next 60 seconds with the national anthem. So once again, to all our political party chairmen, the candidates, we ask that you please take your seats. And to all the journalists, the photographers, the cameramen, kindly clear the forecourt and make your way to the designated press areas. This will be the final announcement. To all the journalists, the cameramen, the photographers who are taking pictures and videos, we ask that you please clear the forecourt and make your way to the designated press areas. Thank you very much.
Imam yana ko amma waya cikin gidan.
Excellencies, distinguished leaders, esteemed elders of our great nation, Nigeria, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the press, and fellow citizens tuning in live from across Nigeria and the world. The hour is upon us, and I'd like to ask everyone in the hall to please rise as we take the national anthem of this great nation, Nigeria.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians old and proud to serve a sovereign motherland.
Thank you very much.
May please be seated. I know we were expecting more, but we'll make do with this one as we begin today's event. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to welcome you to this historic gathering, the signing of the first National Peace Accord on issue-based campaign ahead of the 2027 general elections. In this hall today are leaders of our great nation, political leaders, presidential candidates, governorship and National Assembly candidates, party chairmen, members of the diplomatic community, electoral stakeholders, security leadership, the civil society, as well as the media and other distinguished Nigerians. My name is Kayode Okikiolu, gentleman of the press with Africa's News Leader Channels Television, and it is my honor to be co-anchoring today's crucial event alongside someone I describe as an insider.
Dr. Emmanuel Nkanta, thank you very much, and I believe that today's event will be a unique one. It's quite auspicious, and together as Nigerians, as also having members of the diplomatic community, we'll see how much we can come together to build a more peaceful and humane world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Please allow us to acknowledge and introduce distinguished leaders and dignitaries present in our midst today. And I'll begin by recognizing the presence of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, who is here representing the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. Senator George Akume, you're welcome. A round of applause for him. We also have here present in our midst His Excellency Senator Godswill Obot Akpabio, GCON, the Senate President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, who is here represented by the Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Barau Jibrin, CFR. A warm applause for him. You're welcome, Senator Jibrin. Also here is a representative of a Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, GCON, is ably represented by Honorable Hassan Ado Dogua. A warm applause for him. You're welcome.
And we also have His Excellency General Abusalami A. Abubakar, retired GCFR, the former head of state and chairman, the National Peace Committee, ably represented by General Martin Luther Aguai, retired CFR, FSS, MSS, DSS, FWC, former Chief of Defense Staff and Chief of Army Staff. A round of applause, please.
We'd also like to acknowledge the presence of His Lordship, Most Reverend Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, CON, Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, and of course, the convener of the National Peace Committee. Let's give him a warm applause as well. We'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Your Excellencies state governors who are present or represented here in our midst today. Thank you very much. As well as other members of the National Peace Committee. Thank you. Please, a warm applause for them. They've been doing this work of brokering peace in Nigeria's political space tirelessly for years now. Thank you for the great work. We'd also like to acknowledge the presence of former governors in our midst, distinguished senators and honorable members of the House of Representatives of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
We also wish to acknowledge the presence of honorable ministers of the Federation. And also we have the Inspector General of Police, Olatunji Riwandisu, PSC, ably represented by the DIG Umar Shehu Nadada, DIG Operations, representing the IG. Please, a round of applause for him. Thank you very much. And for most of us who are very much acquainted with the signing of the National Peace Committee, we have, and also the accord itself, we have two major weaknesses to the signing of that accord. The first, the IG of Police, and the second, we have the INEC chairman. Please permit me as we welcome Professor Joash Ojo Amopitan, SAN, the Honorable Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission. A round of applause, please. You're welcome, Prof.
We'd also like to acknowledge the presence of all government functionaries, the presidential candidates who are here present, the National Assembly candidates, the governorship candidates, and the national chairmen of our political parties. You're welcome. Please, a warm applause for them. Also with us today is a strong representation from the diplomatic community. And the representative of the ambassador and head of delegation of the European Union to Nigeria and ECOWAS, His Excellency Gautier Minio, is here with us. He's represented by Agnieszka Torres, the Chargée d'Affaires of the EU. A warm applause for her.
And we have with us all traditional and religious leaders here present. Also to acknowledge the presence of members of the EU SDGN, talking about the partners and other civil society organizations. A round of applause, please, for our partners. Thank you.
Well, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, without taking much of your time, we're going to get right into the formal opening of today's crucial gathering. We describe it as a solemn yet powerful event. It is our absolute privilege to invite a statesman whose dedication to peace and democratic transition remains an inspiration across our continent and for generations to come. Former head of state of Nigeria and an elder statesman. Please welcome the chairman of the National Peace Committee, His Excellency General Abdusalami Abubakar, GCFR, for his welcome remarks. He's here represented by General Martin Luther Agwai, CFR, former Chief of Defense Staff and Chief of Army Staff. Please a warm applause as he makes his way to the podium.
Your Excellencies, I would not like to repeat the protocol that has already been established. However, I want to recognize the Secretary to the government who is representing His Excellency, the President and the Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces. I would like to welcome all of you to this very important event, the signing ceremony of the first peace accord for the 2027 general election. In particular, I would like to welcome His Excellency, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, GCFR, Commander-in-Chief and the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, hereby today represented by the Secretary to the Federal Government. I would equally like to welcome all political parties, the party chairmen, and the presidential, if there are gubernatorial candidates and National Assembly candidates to this event, you are all welcome. Similarly, I welcome the diplomatic community, particularly the ambassadors of the EU, US, UK, France, Germany, and our colleagues from the UN, ECOWAS, and the UN office in West Africa. Furthermore, I welcome all our partners, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor J.O. Amupitan, the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and all INEC commissioners, the Inspector General of Police, hereby represented by DIG Nadada, civil society organization, media houses, and everyone who has responded to our invitation to come and be chief of witnesses of the signing of the peace accord on issue-based campaign. Since 2015, the National Peace Committee facilitated 30 peace accords, 5 peace accords at the national level before 2015, 2019, and 2023 general elections. 25 peace accords at the subnational level, including states with off-cycle elections. Additionally, the Peace Committee established independent state-based peace architecture in 23 states to help submit the work of the committee at the national level. The issue-based campaign peace accord we are signing today was established in 2019 to promote political campaigns and rally based on issues related to Nigeria rather than sentiment. It is an accord that calls on political parties and candidates to compete fairly on the issue of ideas, policies, and programs, debate opposition views respectfully, mobilize supporters peacefully and responsibly, protect voters and respect electoral institutions, and reject hate speech, incitement, misinformation, and other forms of spiteful narrative that will lead to intimidation and violence, capable of undermining electoral integrity. Over the years, political campaigns and rallies have neglected the significance of party manifestos and programs and create the platform of political parties to resort to name calling, personal insult, and character assassination. Political campaigns have taken away civility and decency in public discourse and conversation and have created a toxic atmosphere that has the potential to incite citizens against the state, against other political parties and candidates. It is for this reason that since 2019, the Peace Committee has established the first peace accord to encourage issue-based campaign. It has annotated the peace accord linking every clause of the provision of the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and other extant laws. This ensures that the commitment contained in the accord are firmly anchored in the existing legal framework and serve as a clear reminder to political actors of their obligation and responsibility throughout the electoral processes. Central to this effort is the establishment of the Election Security Information, ESI for short, the HOP, a dedicated for elections security information that monitors electoral offenses and broadens security development and analysis their potential impact on elections across Nigeria. The HOP provides a platform for monitoring, verifying, and analyzing election security development and produces regular monthly threat assessment and contextual analysis to support early warning, preventive engagement, and evidence-based decision-making. Collectively, this initiative demonstrates the committee's commitment to moving beyond electoral peace message towards a comprehensive approach that combines contextual understanding, preventive diplomacy, stakeholders engagement, citizen participation, legal compliance, field-level monitoring, evidence-based analysis, and accountability throughout the electoral cycle. Now that the 2027 general election is 5 months away, and the official commitment of campaign is tomorrow, the National Peace Committee is today committing all political parties, party chairmen, candidates, and campaign spokespersons to peaceful political rallies, devoid of incitement, personal insult, and attack. Therefore, on behalf of all the members of the National Peace Committee and all Nigerians, I'm appealing to all the political parties, party chairmen, candidates, campaign councils, and their spokespersons to please campaign based on issues that are of significant concern to Nigerians. Avoid the spread of false and fake news, personal attack, and insults. Promote respect and tolerance for differences in opinion. Ensure civility and decency in public discourse and comply with the spirit and the letter of the accord. Finally, I would like to thank all the members of the Peace Committee for their commitment and dedication to the peace and unity of this country. I would like to thank the European Union and the Swiss for their technical partnership and support. My appreciation goes to all the members of the National Peace Committee Secretariat and the team for the good work they have been doing. May God bless and protect Nigeria. Thank you and good afternoon.
May God bless and protect Nigeria. Please, a round of applause for His Excellency. Thank you so much, General, for those words. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's about a decade now since the National Peace Committee has remained steadfast in its commitment to fostering peaceful, transparent, and credible elections in Nigeria. And today happens to be one of those days when we bring together relevant key stakeholders to commit themselves to peaceful processes before, during, and after the elections. Today is not about party colors, it's about the Nigerian color. That is the green and the white of Nigeria. Today is not about people coming from north, south, east, and west, but it's about people coming together as Nigeria. Of course, with the support and the friendly partnership of the diplomatic community. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we go to the next on our program of events, just to remind us, in case you just walked in, that this signing is about going for issues and avoiding insult. Decent campaigns, no hate speech, no fake news, no attacks on religion, tribe, or persons. Nigeria belongs to each and every one of us. It is against this backdrop, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome for the presentation on national context of emerging issues. If your hands are not busy, please join us as we welcome Mr. Asabe Ndai, the project manager, Kuka Center, for this. Please, a round of applause for as she comes forward. We can do better. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and the good people of our great country, Nigeria. Kindly permit me to stand on the already established protocol. I am Asabe Ndahi, and I serve as a project manager at the Kuka Center, Secretariat of the National Peace Committee. It is a great privilege to welcome you all to this important occasion of the first signing of the National Peace Accord ahead of the 2027 general elections, which is a significant step towards promoting peaceful and credible elections in Nigeria. We're not here to merely sign a document. We're here to establish a standard of political conduct. Hence, the theme of this presentation is From Commitment to Accountability. But I'll first start by explaining what the Peace Accord is. The Peace Accord is a public commitment by political parties and candidates to peaceful political competition, respect for the rule of law, democratic accountability, and the will of the people. The Peace Committee facilitates the two Peace Accord to ensure peaceful, issue-based campaigns for the first signing, and for the second signing, it is to ensure that political actors accept the electoral outcomes, and where they are aggrieved, they can seek legal redress. But I'll also want to give a brief history of the National Peace Committee. The National Peace Committee was conceptualized in 2014 under the advisement of the former UN Secretary General, the late Kofi Annan, and Chief Emeka Anyoko, the former Commonwealth Secretary General. This was in response to the wide fears of violence that were linked to the 2015 presidential election campaigns. We saw malicious campaigns using ethnic, religious sentiments and hate speech amidst the existential and emerging security threats already in the country at the time. We also recall the 2011 post-election violence, which seems to be the most violent elections that we've had since the return to democracy in 1999. And in order to avert all of this danger, the committee was convened by His Lordship, Dr. Matthew Hassan Kuka, under the chairmanship of General Absalam. The committee currently has 17 members, many of whom are present today. The core mandate of the committee is to provide moral intervention and alternative dispute resolution platform for critical election stakeholders and to contribute to peaceful, credible, free and fair elections. The committee has also facilitated the signing of peace accords, and today we signed the 31st peace accord. I think that the committee deserves a round of applause for its contribution to stability and democracy in Nigeria. Finally, the committee offers national mediation in post-electoral disputes or crisis. Now, in the month of March 2026, the committee convened different electoral stakeholders and presented to them the annotations to the peace accord. So the accord we'll be signing today, it's not just a document, but it's a document that is backed by law. I would like to just state that the peace accord is a reflection of the Constitution, the Electoral Act, the INEC guidelines and regulations, and all the other legal frameworks that govern our electoral process. And I'll give you an example using the clause 2 of the accord that will be signed today. And I read, that I, as a political chairman or a political party chairman or a candidate, will ensure that I, my campaign spokesperson, officials and supporters will refrain from creating, publishing, disseminating, endorsing, or knowingly amplifying fake news and misinformation during our campaign engagements, where such conduct is intended to incite violence and undermine the integrity of the electoral process. And this is backed by Section 22, 39, 42, and 45 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, which provides for freedom of expression, protects political debate, but also prohibits unlawful or harmful conduct that threatens public order, safety, or the rights of other persons. Correspondingly, Section 96, 97, and 101 of the Electoral Act of 2026 also prohibits political conduct that promotes violence, intimidation, inflammatory rhetorics, or religious, ethnic, or sectional division during elections. And the penalties that are provided for this are also in Section 96, 97, and 101, but I'll be reading only one. Section 96 says anybody who is in breach of all of these provisions in Section 96 of the Electoral Act is liable to face 12 months imprisonment or pay the sum of 5 million naira. And that is just for an individual. Where a political party is found guilty, for the first offense, they will pay 10 million naira, and subsequent offenses, they will pay 5 million naira each. And we move on to accountability and enforcement of the peace accord. A lot of people often ask this question, is the peace accord enforceable? And we say yes, the peace accord is an enforceable document. And that is why we have the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission today and the representative of the IG of police who are here to append their signatures to the accord to make sure that should anybody be in breach of this peace accord, which is a reflection of the Constitution of Nigeria and the Electoral Act, the person can be found liable and be punishable by the provisions of the law. I would also like to introduce you to the Election Security Information Hub. The ESI Hub, as we call it, is a repository of election security, which was established in June 2025 and has been gathering data on election-related violence that has a tendency to impact elections alongside electoral offenses. But as we progress into this presentation, I'll speak more about the ESI Hub. Why are we here today? To establish the boundaries within which political competition must take place. We're here also today to set standards for the 2027 campaigns before political competition escalates into electoral conflict. As we know, the clock is ticking. Today, we're 152 days away from the presidential election and 172 days away from the governorship and State House of Assembly election. And so we're here to make sure that as we sign this accord today, that we are committing to Nigerians that our competition will not become hostility and disagreements will not degenerate to violence. Political mobilization will not become intimidation. Electoral disputes will not become conflict. And finally, information does not become a weapon against electoral integrity. And I'm going to present to you lessons from the 2022 Peace Accord, because in 2022, September, the Peace Accord was signed just like this one to ensure that parties commit themselves to issue-based campaign. And today we have the results. This is not simply a theoretical concern. We have evidence from previous electoral cycles that shows us where compliance broke down and brings us to these lessons. We see that the biggest breach of the Peace Accord was with Clause 1, where parties committed themselves to conduct issue-based campaigns. But the result shows that there was 43% breach of that particular clause. We also see that the clause that provides for the refraining from insults and violence was also breached to 13.5%. And also the clause that provides that there will be no fake news or disinformation was also breached to 9%. All the other clauses of the accord were also breached, but not in equal numbers. And speaking further on the clause that was particularly breached, which is the clause to conduct issue-based campaign, we had a lot of violations. 58% of those violations were from spokespersons, and the number of states that were affected out of the 36 were 22 states. The most affected states were Kaduna, Plateau, Kano, Lagos, Rivers, and Benue. So we say political language is not just communication. In a tense electoral environment, it can actually become a risk signal. We talk about the trends, the patterns, and the risk signals. Since the conclusion of the 2023 general elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission has conducted at least 70 elections, which include the 8 off-cycle elections, the last of which was concluded just last week with the Osun State election. And then we've had repeated signing in the off-cycle election. We've had by-elections and rerun elections. And most of the trends, patterns, and risk signals we've seen include vote buying and inducement, misinformation and disinformation, intimidation of opponents and victims, political violence and thuggery, kidnapping and attacks and criminality, attacks at rallies, meetings, and campaign events, destruction of campaign offices, billboards, and vehicles, clashes between rival parties and supporters, and attacks on candidates, party supporters, and campaign teams. We must note that one offense is an incident. A pattern is a warning signal, revealing trends that may require early attention and preventive action. The value of monitoring is not in counting yesterday's problems. It is in identifying tomorrow's risks. And following that, we see what are the possible risks that could undermine the 2027 elections. As we look to these elections, the risks are not isolated. They fall broadly into 3 interconnected areas. These risks, as we see, as I will be speaking about them, can reinforce one another, and all of this can ultimately undermine confidence in the electoral process. We have violence and intimidation risks, which includes political violence, threats, intimidations, and attacks on electoral infrastructure. We also have electoral manipulation risks, which include vote buying or inducement, voter suppression, and electoral malpractice. And then for the last category, we have hate speech, incitement, misinformation, identity-based mobilization, and political manipulation. But what is important is that the Electoral Act of 2026 has provided adequate provisions in the law, spelling out what is an offense and what the penalties are. And I think that it behoves on the Electoral Commission to ensure that whoever is found in breach of these electoral offenses should be held accountable. So we want to speak more about the ESI Hub. As I said, the ESI Hub is a repository for election security information that gathers, analyzes, and shares verified data on insecurity and electoral offenses and its impact on elections. And this is done to support evidence-based decision-making among electoral stakeholders. As we see today, the Peace Accord establishes the standard for political conduct, but it is the ESI Hub that will provide the evidence needed to monitor that particular commitment. The 2 frameworks that the ESI Hub deploys include the Election-Related Violence Tracker, which tracks insecurity that has a tendency to impact on elections, and the Electoral Offenses Tracking System, which tracks electoral laws violation, the Peace Accord violations, and all other institutional abuses during elections. And so this is a risk map of Nigeria based on the methodology used by the ESI Hub. And this data is an aggregate of what has been gathered from June 2025, when the ESI Hub was established, to August 2026. And in terms of insecurity, we have 2,510 recorded incidents. The most affected states are Zamfara, Borno, Kaduna, Niger, Kwara, Benue, and Plateau. And the top threats include banditry, kidnapping, cultism, and terrorism. For the electoral offenses, we have recorded 381 incidents, and the most affected states include FCT, Osun, Oyo, Ondo, and Lagos. And the top threats, again, include vote buying, political violence, thuggery, and physical attacks. We see that risk is geographically uneven, but concentrated around specific political and security hotspots. And I'll just recap again the top insecurity threats in Nigeria. as I've just mentioned, banditry, kidnapping, cultism, terrorism, armed robbery, political violence, farmer-herder conflict, and communal clash. Insecurity becomes an electoral risk when it constrains participation, fuels fear, and disrupts political competition. And so we cannot fold our hands and allow insecurity to continue, because that is a threat to democratic participation. The top electoral offenses in Nigeria include vote buying, political violence, information disorder, political intimidation, political party conflicts, INEC security agency and institutional misconduct, civil unrest and protest activities, electoral misconduct, rigging and result manipulation, campaign and election material violations, and lastly, voter suppression and access restrictions. The threat to electoral integrity is multidimensional, as we can see. Physical violence, electoral offenses, political disputes, and information disorder can reinforce one another, creating conditions that undermine public confidence and the credibility of the electoral process. The journey to electoral violence often begins before the campaign period. The grievances, the rivalries, and mobilization networks formed during party primaries can carry into campaigns, and if left unmanaged, escalate into electoral violence. Therefore, it is imperative to address the drivers of these tensions early. And following the succession of the primaries into the campaign periods, these are some of the major issues that we have seen. We saw intra-party disputes and factionalization. We also saw defections and political realignments, litigation and legal challenges, primary nomination disputes, misinformation and disinformation again, vote buying and inducement, threats, intimidation and thuggery, hate speech and inflammatory rhetorics, physical violence attack, and campaign rally disruption. We must note that electoral violence often has a history before it becomes an incident. The risks observed during party primaries can evolve into campaign period tensions, and if unmanaged, contribute to electoral violence. So, what then do we do? What the campaigns Nigerians want to see, or should I say the campaign the good people of Nigeria deserve? We recommend that political parties and candidates in the period of this campaign conduct peaceful, issue-based campaign, debate policies and ideas vigorously but respectfully. For campaign teams and supporters, we expect you to mobilize responsibly and do not cause any violence or intimidation in the process of mobilization. As for the party and candidate spokesperson, we expect a lot from you because this is where most of the issues start. We expect responsible messaging, kindly verify information, and avoid inflammatory or inciting statements. As for the media and CSO, verify information before amplifying, conduct evidence-based advocacy. Security agencies, we expect security sector neutrality from you, restraint and equal protection for all citizens and for candidates as well. For traditional and religious leaders, you continue to remain the gatekeepers of our society. Kindly promote peace and discourage inflammatory rhetoric during this campaign period. As for the electoral institution, we expect impartiality, transparency, and consistent enforcement. For my dear Nigerian citizens, or my fellow Nigerian citizens, let us shun violence, inducement, and inflammatory rhetoric. A peaceful campaign requires responsible conduct from all actors. Responsible leadership shapes responsible campaigns. And this brings us to perhaps the most important shift in this year's peace accord mechanism, from signing to monitoring. After today's signing, the Election Security Information Hub will continue to monitor, verify, document, escalate, and give these records to the Peace Committee. The National Peace Committee will engage in preventive diplomacy based on evidence, but then we beckon on all stakeholders, particularly INEC and the security agencies, to be on the alert during this campaign season and make sure that they ensure that the candidates and the party chairmen conduct themselves in a responsible manner. The real test of the peace accord is what political actors do after they leave this room. Today's signing ceremony marks the beginning of a monitored commitment to peaceful political competition. In conclusion, the signature is only the beginning. Today, we sign a commitment. From tomorrow, that commitment must become conduct. The true measure of this accord will not be the signatures on this document, but the choices made in the heat of political competition. How how leaders speak, how campaigns are conducted, how supporters are mobilized, and how disagreements are managed. Peaceful elections are not secured by promises alone. They are secured when those promises are consistently translated into responsible action. The commitment is ours, the responsibility is collective, and posterity will judge us not by what we promised today, but by what we did with that promise. The legacy of this accord will be written not in the ink of your signatures, but in the peace, dignity, and integrity we leave behind. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
One more time, a warm applause for Ms. Asabe Dai, the project manager at Kuka Center, which is the secretary for the National Peace Committee. Thank you for that reminder that we all have a role to play in ensuring peaceful campaigns and ultimately peaceful elections, whether you're a candidate, a supporter, a spokesperson, a traditional leader, security. We all have a role to play. Thank you for that extensive background and context to what the peace accord is all about. And a reminder also that the peace accord is not merely a paper. No, it is a powerful and enforceable document that is binding on all the signatories. And it's good to hear that it's in alignment with the laws of our land. Thank you very much once again. We now switch gears and move swiftly to the messages of peace. What is a peace accord signing without messages of peace from our stakeholders and partners? But we appeal to our speakers to share their message within the allotted time, which is 5 minutes. I will begin from the platforms, the political parties. And to speak on behalf of all the political parties, please welcome with me Dr. Yusuf Dantale, the National Chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, for his message of peace. Please let's give a warm applause to Dr. Dantale as he makes his way forward. Thank you.
The President, Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, G7, and ably represented by the Secretary of Government of the Federation, the Senate President, represented by the Deputy Senate President, the Speaker, ably represented by the Deputy Speaker of the House, the Chief Organizer of the Peace Accord, General Absalam Abubakar, here represented by General Agway, my father, Bishop Kuka, the Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the Inspector General of Police, religious fathers here present, the National Chairman of registered political parties here present, presidential candidates, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, good afternoon. I will start by commending the Peace Committee for what you have been doing for this country, and we truly appreciate it and will continue to work with you at all levels. Nigeria is one country that is so blessed that there's no country on this continent that can accommodate refugee problem from Nigeria if, God forbid, there is an aberration. And we all chose democracy as the way of government. And democracy is about inclusion of every segment of the society, irrespective of religious affiliation, irrespective of party affiliations, that we must abide by. And for that reason, we have this responsibility to ensure that any government that will be produced in the course of a democratic exercise should be legitimate, so that Nigerians can respect or obey the consulted authority that is the outcome of such exercise. While we are doing this today, sir, this is to the peace accord. Our leaders, you are able to put Nigerians together like this because we are respected Nigerians who live to respect you. But when we pursue peace in the absence of justice, it becomes illusionary. Let me thank the INEC for what you just did in Osun State. We congratulate you. You did so well. And we pray and believe that this will continue. And also thank civil society organizations like the Yaga Africa and others who came together to ensure that we have this process seamlessly. We need this to continue in the 2027 general elections. And we must look at a few infractions where people who have no vote in a particular place, like sitting governors, will troop to one where they don't have vote and threaten a man who has a vote, who is contesting election, that will remove you. We should be looking at some of these things. These are aberrations to what we are doing here. We should be able to caution ourselves. And where we have people or governors or using state institution to deny other contestants means of campaign, like imposition of outrageous taxes for placement of billboards and others. We should look at some of these things going forward. I thank you so much. We must continue to live in peace, but we should also uphold justice where there's need for justice, so that all of us can enjoy this democracy in peace. Thank you so much. I will continue to also urge INEC to do what you did once again. You did so well. Thank you.
Once again, a warm applause for Dr. Dantale, the chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council. Thank you very much for those words of peace and for also keeping it to time. We appreciate you. Well, in his speech, he mentioned an agency more than twice, and I consider it fitting to invite the head of that agency next, because credible elections require credible institutions, and the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, remains central to Nigeria's electoral process. It is therefore my pleasure to invite the Honorable Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Josh Amukwiton, SAN, to deliver his goodwill message. Please, a warm applause for Professor Josh Amukwiton as he delivers his message of peace and goodwill message. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by the Secretary to the Federal Government, Senator George Akume, Your Excellency, the Chairman of National Peace Committee, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, retired GCFR, ably represented by General Martin Luther Agwe, the Most Reverend Father Kuka Hassan, who is the convener of the National Peace Committee, our dear distinguished presidential candidates and the running mates for the 2027 general election. Permit me, for the breach of protocol, the Senate President is also represented here by the DSP. The Speaker of the House of Representatives is represented by Honorable Adodogwa. The Honorable National Commissioners of INEC that are present here, as well as the Honorable Secretary of INEC, National Chairman of and leaders of all political parties, the Inspector General of Police, members of ISIS that are here, the National Chairman of Inter-Party Advisory Council, distinguished representatives of the diplomatic corps, civil society organizations, traditional and religious leaders, esteemed members of the media, fellow citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is Herbert Hoover who said, peace is not made at the council table or by treaty, but peace is made on the heart of men. Therefore, the essence of this very epoch-making occasion in Africa's largest democracy that is about to unfold in the year of our Lord 2027 is the heartbeat, not just of Africa, but of the world. So it's therefore my profound honor to stand before you today on behalf of the Independent National Electoral Commission. We gather here not merely as a ritual political tradition, but as a deliberate act of patriotism. I wish to start by commending the National Peace Committee. For years, you have been moral compass of our electoral system, reminding us that while we may differ in our political versions, we are united by one map, the Federal Republic of Nigeria. For over a decade, since its pioneering intervention in 2015, the National Peace Committee has provided an invaluable moral anchor for our republic, convening political actors to disarm hostility and commit to non-violence. Coming immediately after the successful, peaceful conclusion of the Osun State governorship election just 3 days ago, on Saturday, 15th day of August 2026, I am honored to stand before you as we transition from the off-cycle successes to the grand national stage ahead of the 2027 general election. As far as we're concerned, all those off-cycle elections, they were just milestones and not the destination. Tomorrow, Wednesday, 19th of August 2026, marks the statutory commencement of public campaigns and rallies for the 2027 general election, as stipulated in the Electoral Act and the revised timetable and schedule of activities released by the Commission. As we are all aware, the presidential and National Assembly elections will take place on Saturday, 16th of January 2027, while the governorship and the state houses of assembly will be held on the 6th of February 2027. That we gather on the very eve of this crucial milestone of commencement of political campaign is both deliberate and profound. Before the first campaign flag is unfurled, before the first rally is staged, and before our political rhetoric fills our public space, it is necessary that those who seek to lead this nation first gather to establish the ethical boundaries of their contest. At this stage, may I refer the political parties to the relevant provisions of the Electoral Act, most especially sections 96 to 102 of the Electoral Act, as well as paragraphs 29 to 36 of the Political Parties Regulation enacted by INEC, which contains guidelines, rules, and regulations for the conduct of campaigns. Today, signing of the first National Peace Accord therefore marks a critical milestone. We are exactly 5 months away from the 2027 general election. The world is watching, but more importantly, the Nigerian people, the youths, the farmers, the entrepreneurs, and the elderly, they are watching all of us. They are not just asking for much. They are simply asking for a process that is credible and a campaign that respects their intelligence. We must be candid about the realities confronting our democratic space. Recent data from the NPC, Election Committee Information Hub, indicates an alarming resurgence of hate speech, toxic polarization, coordinated misinformation, and personally driven political discourse. As preparations for the 2027 general election intensify, we are witnessing a disturbing shift from policy-driven engagement towards character assassination, identity-based provocation, and inflammatory rhetorics. If left unchecked, this trend threatens to poison the public square, erode civil trust, and ignite avoidable conflict across our societies. When we talk of issue-based campaign, we're talking of campaign in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Electoral Act, the Constitution of the political parties, as well as the manifestos contained therein. Electoral contest is a constitutional democracy and not just total wars. They are competitive job interviews before the electorate. It's just like seeking a job. And therefore, you must succumb to the rules as if it's a competitive job interview. The 2027 general election presents complex socio-economic, security, and developmental questions and demand rigorous intellectual and policy-focused debates. Nigerians do not want insults. They want solutions. They deserve to hear clear, concrete, and measurable manifestos detailing how political parties intend to drive economic growth, bolster national security, expand infrastructure, improve healthcare, modernize education, and foster social inclusion. Today, this accord is a solemn pledge to elevate public discourse to these substantive issues. By signing this accord, you are committed to an issue-based campaign. This is a significant departure from the politics of character assassination, identity manipulation, and inflammatory rhetorics. Nigeria's challenges and indeed our opportunities are too great for us to spend this election cycle in trenches of bitterness. For the Commission, that is INEC, our moral authority to demand decorum from political actors rests squarely on our own administrative and technological preparedness. I am pleased to report that our preparation for the 2027 general elections are progressing with absolute precision. We are scaling our operational logistics to manage a massive nationwide ad hoc workforce of 1.4 million personnel across over 176,000 polling units. As the electoral umpire, INEC commitment to you and the people of Nigeria is unwavering. Our responsibility is to ensure that the ballot is protected and the will of the voters is reflected in the final results. We have spent the last 8 months refining our technologies, enhancing our logistics, and training our personnel. The outcome is reflected in the governorship elections we conducted in Anambra State in November 2025, the FCT Area Council election in February 2026, the Ekiti State governorship election in June 2026, and the recently concluded Osun State governorship election, apart from 13 off-cycle by-elections that were also conducted within the time I took over. As I've often said, INEC cannot deliver a perfect election alone. An election is a multi-stakeholder venture. We provide the pitch and the refereeing, but the quality of the game depends on the players. When candidates and parties prioritize peace, our job becomes exponentially more effective. When we noticed the situation in Osun State, after the peace accord that was signed, we came back and went to the drawing table, and we had to retreat to all the security agencies under ISIS, so that you cannot have a successful election if there's no peace. And we needed peace in Osun State. So I want to thank the security agencies for responding to that and for ensuring that the election was basically peaceful. Now, a call to the candidates and party leaders, to the presidential candidates and party chairmen gathered here. The document you are about to sign is not a mere piece of paper. It is a covenant and a social contract with the Nigerian people. And it is a contract with statutory and constitutional flavor. of which, as we heard from Barrister Sabe, I have the mandate of the law to enforce in line with in the company of the law enforcement agents. It is a covenant and a social contract with the Nigerian people. So lead by example. That is number one. As you sign this, lead by example. Your supporter looks to you for cues. Now addressing the presidential candidates. Your supporters look to you for cues. If you speak the language of peace, they will act with peace. If you incite them, they will ignite. 2, focus on what and how. Tell the voters what you will do for the economy, security, and education, and how you intend to achieve it. Let the 2027 campaign be a marketplace of ideas, not a theater of war. 3, respect the umpire and the law. We welcome constructive criticism. It makes us better. But we urge you to refrain from preemptive declarations of victory or spread of information that undermines public confidence in our democratic institution. In an era dominated by rapid digital communication, we must also confront the menace of misinformation, disinformation, and foreign information manipulation and interference. Fake news and unverified premature declaration of results are designed to trigger panic and subvert public order. I call on all political parties to restrain their digital media teams, official spokesmen, and online youth wing from weaponizing falsehood to gain temporary political advantage. Addressing the incumbent, Your Excellency, Mr. President, your presence here through your secretary to the federal government today as both the president and a candidate signals a commitment to the stability of our country. The neutrality of state apparatus is the bedrock of any credible election, and we look forward to the process where the incumbency remains a platform for service to Nigerian people. The 2027 general election must be improvement on all our previous efforts. We're introducing further transparency measures in the result management process to ensure that the people's choice is not just a slogan, but a reality. This is not the absence of competition, it is the presence of rules and willingness to abide by them. Let us compete vigorously, but let us compete decently. Let us remember that at the end of this exercise, there will be no winners if Nigeria is the loser. Let me state unequivocally that INEC has no interest in who wins or loses any election. The Commission does not have a candidate, nor does it favor any political platform. Our only interest is a lawful, transparent, credible, and inclusive process. We will act as an uncompromising, impartial umpire, ensuring a level playing field for all contestants. As I sign this first national accord today as a witness and the Chief Electoral Officer of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I call on all registered political parties and presidential candidates and other candidates to internalize every line of this agreement. Let us show our citizens and international community the Nigerian democracy, being the largest in Africa, has matured beyond destructive conflict into a refined policy-driven contest of ideas. Let us work together to ensure that the journey to 2027 is remembered not by the division, discord, or inflammatory rhetorics but as a triumph of Nigerian democratic spirit. INEC is ready. Nigeria is expectant. Let us make the 2027 general election a shining example of African democracy, Nigeria being the largest democracy in Africa. In closing, I want to thank the National Peace Committee once again for this initiative. To the candidates, as we pick up the pen today, remember that the ink represents the hopes of over 200 million Nigerians. Write a history of peace. Write a story of progress. May God bless the National Peace Committee. May God bless the Independent National Electoral Commission and continue to guide the Federal Republic of Nigeria towards enduring peace, unity, and progress. Thank you all.
Another round of applause for our able chairman and also one who has been at the forefront of ensuring that our elections are credible and also peaceful. You agree with me too that the national chairman, talking about INEC here, has been very consistent, especially when it has to do with the signing of the peace accord. Thank you very much, Prof. Remember your words when you say the 2027 general elections must be a marketplace of ideas, not a theater of war. And so let us compete decently. Thank you so much for your words. Please, another round of applause for the INEC chairman. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are gradually getting to the point where we gather to sign the peace accord. But until then, just to remind us that we must learn to focus on building bridges, like the chairman mentioned, of love and unity, not walls of hatred and division. It is freedom of speech. And freedom of speech does not mean the freedom to spread hate. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, 3 things before I call on the next speaker that we need to take note. That today is about saying yes to decent campaigns, respect for institutions, and safety for citizens. It is against that backdrop where we talk about safety for citizens that I wish to invite to the podium for the goodwill message. None but one we know so much when we say the police, of course, actually our friends. Please join us as we welcome for the goodwill message the Inspector General of Police, Olatunjiri Wan Disu, here represented by the DIG Umar Shehu Nadada. A round of applause, please, as he comes forward. Thank you so much.
Your Excellency, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by Senator George Akume, GCON, permit me to stand on the already established protocol. It is a great pleasure to be part of this important national engagement, and I wish to commend His Excellency, General Abdusalam A. Abubakar, GCFR, and the distinguished members of the National Peace Committee for their continued patriotism, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to strengthening Nigeria's democratic journey. The peace accord over the years has become an important moral instrument in our political process. It reminds political actors that while elections are contests for political leadership, Nigeria itself must remain greater than any election, political party, or individual ambition. Today's gathering is, however, particularly significant. It is not simply another peace accord ahead of an election. It is first national peace accord being signed at the commencement of political campaigns for the 2027 general elections. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the security of an election is not created on the day of the election. It is built gradually through the conduct of political parties, candidates, supporters, and other stakeholders throughout electoral cycle. The language we use during campaigns matters. The issues we choose to emphasize matter. The manner in which we respond to political disagreements matters. A political campaign should be a contest of ideas, policies, programs, and competing visions for the future of our country. It should not be a contest of hatred, intimidation, ethnic mobilization, religious divisions, or violence. We must therefore collectively reject hate speech, inflammatory rhetoric, incitement, disinformation, deliberate manipulation of ethnic or religious sentiments for political advantage. We must also recognize that words can have consequences. A statement made at any political rally, on television, online, or through social media can travel within seconds to millions of people. When such statements are deliberately designed to provoke anger or hostility, it can transform political disagreements into violence. This is why I urge all political leaders and candidates to exercise the highest level of responsibility in their public communications throughout the campaign period. Distinguished guests, Nigeria Police Force recognizes that democracy requires vigorous political competition. We have no interest in determining who wins or loses an election. Our interest is in ensuring every Nigerian is able to participate in the democratic process freely, safely, and without fear. The police will therefore remain professional, impartial, and guided by the Constitution of the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We will work closely with the Independent National Electoral Commission, the military, the intelligence community, and other security and law enforcement agencies to provide the security environment necessary for political activities and credible elections. But security agencies cannot secure elections alone. Political parties and candidates have a fundamental responsibility to help create the environment in which elections can be peacefully conducted. We therefore appeal to all political actors to ensure that their supporters, campaign organizations, and agents conduct themselves responsibly throughout the campaign period. In particular, political parties must take responsibility for the conduct of those who campaign on their behalf. You cannot publicly preach peace while privately encouraging violence. You cannot call for a credible election while simultaneously undermining the Constitution, the institutions responsible for conducting them. And you cannot seek the mandate of the Nigerian people while creating fear among every citizen whose votes you seek. I must also emphasize that the police will not tolerate the use of political talks, armed groups, criminal elements, or other unlawful structures to intimidate opponents, disrupt political meetings, or interfere with the electoral process. The acquisition, distribution, or use of illegal firearms or other weapons for political purposes will be treated as a serious security threat. Similarly, we must collectively reject the practice of mobilizing young Nigerians into violent political movements and then abandoning them when the elections are over. Our young people should be instruments of democratic renewal, not instruments of political violence. Therefore, there is another dimension of this conversation that deserves emphasis: inclusivity. Nigeria's democracy must provide space for all citizens to participate meaningfully, irrespective of gender, ethnicity, religion, age, disability, or social status. Women, young people, persons with disabilities, and other traditionally underrepresented groups must be able to participate in political activities without intimidation, discrimination, or violence. A peaceful election is not merely one in which there is no violence. It is one in which citizens feel sufficiently secure and confident to exercise their democratic rights. This is why the police will continue to engage political parties, candidates, civil society organizations, traditional institutions, religious leaders, youth groups, and other stakeholders as we prepare for the 2027 elections. Our objective is to prevent security threats before they materialize, respond professionally where incidents occur, and ensure that no individual or group is allowed to place the democratic process at risk. The peace accord being signed today should therefore not be viewed as a ceremonial document. Its true value will be determined by what happens after the signatures are offended. The real test begins when campaigns become intense, when political competition becomes heated, when allegations are made, when results are disputed, and when political interests are placed under pressure. This is when the commitments made here today must become real. I therefore respectfully call upon all political parties, candidates, and their supporters to sign this accord not only with their hands, but with their conscience. Let us make the 2027 campaigns a contest in which Nigeria hear what each political party and candidate intends to do for the country. Let us debate the economy, security, education, healthcare, empowerment, infrastructure, agriculture, technology, and the future of our young people. Let us challenge ideas with better ideas. Let us defeat political arguments with superior arguments, and let Nigerian people ultimately decide through the ballot. As Inspector General of Police, I assure this gathering that the Nigeria Police will continue to work tirelessly with all relevant stakeholders to provide a secure environment for political campaigns and the eventual conduct of peaceful, credible, free, fair, and inclusive elections. We will remain guided by the principles of professionalism, impartiality, accountability, and respect for the rule of law. But we equally ask every political actor to understand that the responsibility for peaceful elections does not belong to the security agencies alone. It belongs to all of us. The 2027 general elections must not be remembered for violence, hate, or division. They should be remembered as an important demonstration of Nigeria's democratic maturity and our collective ability to disagree politically without becoming enemies. Your Excellencies and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we commence this journey towards the 2027 general elections, let us remember that political power is temporary, but Nigeria is permanent. No political victory is worth the loss of a Nigerian life. No political ambition is worth the destruction of our communities. And no election is worth compromising the peace and the unity of our nation. I commend the National Peace Committee once again for this timely initiative and urge all parties to this accord to honor its letter and its spirit through the campaign and electoral process. May the 2027 general elections be peaceful, credible, free, fair, and inclusive. May our political leaders demonstrate the statesmanship required for this defining moment in our national journey. And may Almighty God continue to guide our leaders, protect our citizens, and bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Another round of applause for the DIG. Thank you so much, sir. Political power is temporary, but Nigeria is permanent. great words from the DIG, also reminding us that the interests of the police is to ensure every Nigerian participates in the electoral process freely, safely, and without fear. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before I call on the next, we just have 2 more goodwill messages, and then we go straight to the signing of the peace accord. The DIG mentioned the need to mobilize young Nigerians for peaceful processes. And I think just to add that there is a negative stereotyping of young people as people who are violent and people who probably are not ready to make a positive difference. But today we have a positive narrative about young people. I believe that the youth are ready to be used as instrument of peace building and instrument of building a better Nigeria. And together, like you've mentioned, talking about inclusivity, the youth, women, and persons with disabilities, together we can build a better Nigeria. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, straight to the next on our program of event today on the agenda. For the National Peace Committee, we don't believe in running in isolation. We believe in collaborative efforts, working with partners, and also working with the diplomatic community. It is against that backdrop that we have one of our donors here, one who for over 10 years now have been very much supportive of the work we do in ensuring that we build a more peaceful, and also a very great country, our country, Nigeria. Please permit me as we welcome to the podium none but His Excellency Gauthier Mignot, the European Union Ambassador and head of delegation of the European Union to Nigeria and ECOWAS, ably represented by Agnieszka Torres, the charges of affairs. Please, a round of applause as she comes forth. We can do better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me stand on existing protocols. I'm honored to address you here on behalf of my ambassador, the EU ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Gauthier Mignot, and the first signature ceremony of the 2027 National Peace Accord by the presidential candidates. In 2023, Nigeria once again set an example for Africa and for the world through the peaceful transition of power from one civilian administration to another. As we look ahead to the 2027 general elections, our shared hope, and when I say shared, I really mean it, it's that Nigeria will take further steps to consolidate its democracy through fair, credible, transparent, and peaceful elections. As the largest democracy in Africa, and this was emphasized very much today, elections in Nigeria matter greatly. First and foremost, they matter for Nigerians, but they also matter to the rest of the continent, as Nigeria carries the responsibility to lead and to inspire other African countries. You, the leaders of political parties, you hold special duty in this regard. Your commitment to the peace accord is a powerful signal. You have a vital role to play in ensuring peaceful, content campaigns with a firm stance against violence, against hate speech, and against disinformation. Campaigns promoting respect, inclusivity, and tolerance. You are role models for the voters and for citizens, especially for Nigeria's youth who are looking to you for guidance and for an example. All stakeholders must play their part. The integrity of the process depends on clear and collective commitment to the rules and to the institutions. In this context, we must all respect the fundamental role of the Independent National Electoral Commission. INEC must operate freely, without any pressure and without any interference. In turn, it must demonstrate its neutrality and its independence. INEC's transparency, its professionalism, and its accountability will be essential for public confidence. We also expect the security agencies to maintain strict neutrality and to guarantee safety for all voters. DIG, thank you so much for all your commitment. And personally, I would like to thank you for mentioning gender and women in the electoral process. You're the only one, I guess, except for the MC but mentioned today, So, as a woman, the only woman on stage today, although representing my ambassador who's a man, thank you profoundly, sir. I wish to commend the National Peace Committee, with whom the European Union and International Committee works very much. You proved your role. It was vital in 2015, in 2019, and also in 2023, and you're very relevant and very important in the elections coming ahead of us. The European Union and its member states wishes to reiterate their impartiality. We are not here to support any political party or any candidate other than Nigeria, its people and its democracy. I would like to congratulate you for signature that will happen in a few moments. The signature of the first National Peace Accord. Thank you so much.
There's a warm applause once again to Agnieszka Torres, Chargé d'Affaires of the EU delegation to Nigeria, and ECOWAS representing His Excellency Gautier Minio. Well, the European Union is proof that peace is never achieved in isolation. It is achieved with partnership, a partnership with the right people. So thank you once again to the European Union delegation in Nigeria for partnering with the National Peace Committee to make this a big success. And speaking of partnerships, we also have the honor of welcoming His Excellency Patrick Felix Igloff, the ambassador of Switzerland to Nigeria, for his goodwill message. He's ably represented by Mr. Shemak Rouhani, the Chargé d'Affaires, Embassy of Switzerland in Nigeria. Please a warm applause to Mr. Shemak Rouhani as he comes forward to deliver the goodwill message.
Excellencies, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I suspect that Coyote has a Swiss watch, so in the interest of time, please allow me to stand on the already well-observed protocol. It is a pleasure to join you today for the signing of the first National Peace Accord on issue-based campaigns ahead of Nigeria's 2027 national and general elections. On behalf of the government of Switzerland, I commend the National Peace Committee and the KUKA Center for convening this important engagement. The message of today's gathering is simple but important. Political competition must never come at the expense of peace. Democracy is built on differences. Parties will disagree. Candidates will compete. Citizens will make different choices. What matters is that these differences are expressed through ideas, policies, and peaceful political debate. This is why the commitment to issue-based campaigns is so timely. Nigerians are asking important questions about security, livelihoods, education, governance, inclusion, and the future of their country. These issues deserve to be at the center of political debate as Nigeria approaches 2027. For Switzerland, supporting democracy means supporting the conditions that allow it to thrive. Credible and accountable institutions, meaningful citizen participation, inclusive political dialogue, and peaceful ways of managing differences. It is within this broader commitment that we situate our long-standing partnership with the National Peace Committee. Since 2015, Switzerland, through its partnership with the KUKA Center, has supported the National Peace Committee in its efforts to promote peaceful elections, dialogue, and democratic governance. Over the years, the committee has established itself as an important platform for bringing political actors together, facilitating dialogue, and helping to manage tensions at critical moments in Nigeria's democratic process. Our current collaboration with the KUKA Center through the strengthening for the National Peace Committee stakeholder engagements for peace and good governance in Nigeria builds on this long-standing partnership, seeking to strengthen engagement with electoral institutions, political actors, and local peace structures, while improving accountability and early warning ahead of the 2027 elections. The experience from the 2026 off-cycle elections in Ekiti and Osun states is already providing useful lessons. In both states, our work with the National Peace Committee has focused on strengthening accountability, early warning, and the capacity to identify and respond to electoral risk. The two concluded off-cycle elections now provide another important body of experience. While we should allow the relevant institutions and observers to complete their assessments, the experiences of both Ekiti and Osun will provide valuable insights into what worked, where gaps remain, and how early warning, institutional coordination, and compliance with the peace accord can be further strengthened ahead of 2027. These experiences also remind us that peaceful elections are about more than the absence of violence. Electoral integrity, public confidence, responsible political conduct, and respect for the free choice of citizens are equally important. For Switzerland and our partners, the task now is to learn from these experiences and ensure that the lessons from Ekiti and Osun inform our engagement towards the 2027 general elections. Signing the accord is a commitment. Honoring it is a leadership. Switzerland remains committed to supporting Nigeria's efforts towards peaceful, inclusive, and credible democratic processes. We value our long-standing partnership with the government and good people of Nigeria, the National Peace Committee, as well as our cooperation with the European Union and other partners. I congratulate the National Peace Committee and all those contributing to this important effort. May today's accord strengthen the collective commitment to a peaceful, credible, and issue-based electoral process towards 2027. Thank you.
There's once again a warm applause to Mr. Siamak Rouhani, the Chargé d'Affaires, Embassy of Switzerland to Nigeria. Well, Switzerland is not only a partner in progress to the National Peace Committee and Nigeria at large, but also a partner in peace. I would like to thank you for your unwavering commitment to the success of the National Peace Accord. I would also want to thank all of our speakers for your solid pledges of support towards a peaceful and credible electoral process. Well, Your Excellencies, party leaders, and political candidates, would like to say before pen touches paper this afternoon, let us reflect on the very core solemn obligations contained in the Peace Accord. And I'd like to ask that we direct our attention to the screens just right behind me for the video that's a reading of the Peace Accord to properly set the context of the content before we then put pen to paper. So please, over to the media.
Signing of the first National Peace Accord on issue-based campaigns and the prevention of violence by political parties and candidates contesting the 2027 general elections. Under the auspices of the National Peace Committee, NPC, I, the undersigned Presidential, National Assembly and Governorship candidate, together with the chairperson of the underlisted political party contesting in the 2027 general election, reaffirm my commitment to take proactive measures towards the creation and maintenance of a conducive environment for the conduct of free and peaceful elections in furtherance of the constitutional commitment to a state based on the principles of democracy and social justice, cognizant of the need to maintain a peaceful environment before, during, and after the 2027 general election, and guided by the provisions of the Electoral Act 2026, particularly Sections 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, and 101, as well as the applicable electoral offences contained in Part 7, Sections 118 to 133. Further cognizant of the provisions of the Electoral Act 2026 relating to the buying and selling of voters' cards and votes, including Section 22 and the provisions relating to bribery, undue influence, and threatening under Sections 125, 131, and 132, respectively. Reaffirm my commitment to fully abide by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Electoral Act 2026, regulations and guidelines issued by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and other applicable laws, while adhering to relevant international and regional standards and best practices relating to democratic governance, human rights, and credible elections. Desirous of sustaining and promoting the unity and corporate existence of Nigeria as an indivisible entity, consistent with Section 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended. Determined to avoid conduct that threatens constitutional order, public peace, political stability, or national security, and to comply with applicable provisions of Nigerian criminal law relating to such conduct, I hereby commit to the following. 1. To conduct my campaigns in a peaceful, lawful, and issue-based manner, and to refrain from any conduct that undermines constructive political competition. 2. To ensure that I, my campaign spokespersons, officials and supporters refrain from creating, publishing, disseminating, endorsing, or knowingly amplifying fake news and misinformation during our campaign engagements where such conduct is intended to incite violence and undermine the integrity of the electoral process. 3. To ensure that I, my campaign team, officials and supporters protect women, youth, and persons with disabilities from assault, intimidation, harassment, violence, discrimination, and other forms of abuse, and take reasonable measures to promote their safe, equal, and meaningful participation throughout the campaign period and beyond. 4. To ensure that my campaign cooperates fully with all institutions constitutionally and legally responsible for the conduct, administration, and security of elections, particularly the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the security agencies. 5. To deploy during all my campaign engagements a political communication strategy that is peaceful, inclusive, respectful, culturally sensitive, educative, and centered on issues, and to refrain from personal attacks, character assassination, inflammatory rhetoric, hate speech, incitement, or other forms of communication capable of promoting discrimination, hostility, violence, or undermining peaceful political competition. 6. To cooperate with the National Peace Committee in its mission to monitor adherence to this accord and facilitate mediation where compliance failures occur. 7. To respect and uphold the Constitution and laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Electoral Act 2026, applicable INEC regulations and guidelines, and Nigeria's relevant regional and international obligations relating to democratic governance, human rights, and electoral integrity, and to refrain from any act or omission that undermines the integrity of the electoral process, the peaceful transfer of political power, or the free expression of the will of the electorate. 8. To abide by the letter and spirit of this accord and accept responsibility for my actions, utterances, and those of my campaign officials. Where such utterances violate the principles of this accord, I accept that I may be held responsible and accountable in accordance with the Constitution and laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
And with those solemn words, we announce that the moment we have been waiting for is upon us. The moment when words become commitment, when political competition meets national responsibility, the moment when every party and every candidate says, in effect, that yes, we may disagree on how Nigeria should move forward, but we agree that Nigeria must move forward in peace. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is the order which will conduct the peace accord signing. We will begin with the National Assembly and governorship candidates who are here present. I would like to ask for the National Assembly candidates and governorship candidates in the audience to please rise to their feet. All the National Assembly candidates and the governorship candidates, kindly rise to your feet. Only the National Assembly candidates and governorship candidates, please rise and stay there. Thank you. The pledge will be handed over to you by the ushers. So please, we only need the National Assembly candidates and the governorship candidates to be upstanding. You will get a pledge, it will be handed over to you, and we will read those words and you will append your signature. So we'll just give a few seconds for you to receive the pledge, wherein you will append your signature, your name, the position you're vying for, and your political party.
Governorship candidates and members of the National Assembly, both the Senate and also the House of Representatives. Please, we'll all do that together. Thank you.
So please, if you do not have the pledge yet, kindly indicate and signify by raising your hand so the ushers can hand you your pledge sheet. If you are a National Assembly candidate or a governorship candidate and you do not have the pledge form, kindly raise your hand. So we have someone here in front, the ushers, kindly attend to him. Thank you very much. We also have someone at the back wearing the wine outfit. Please let's attend to him as well. Let's ensure that no one is disenfranchised here today. Once again, if you are a candidate vying for the House of Representatives or the Senate, or a candidate vying for a governorship seat in one of the states in Nigeria, please rise to your feet. You'll receive a pledge, and together we will do this all-important and solemn accord signing. Thank you.
So while you're doing that, in the next 2-3 minutes, we'll all take the pledge together. In the next 3 minutes. And shortly after that, we'll proceed for the signing of the peace accord for presidential candidates and the chairman of political parties.
So we shall begin. And I need you to say along with me, then put your name, contesting under the platform of the underlisted political party, contesting for the position of pledge on behalf of myself or my campaign council to uphold the Constitution and laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I commit to conducting my campaign peacefully, lawfully, and publicly affirm my commitments to issue-based campaigns linked to party manifestos and programs devoid of personal attacks, insults, and bitterness while conducting my campaigns. I pledge to compete fairly based on ideas, debate opposing views respectfully, and reject other forms of spiteful narratives that will lead to intimidation and violence. Capable of undermining electoral integrity. I pledge to reject inflammatory rhetoric and any attempt to exploit ethnic, religious, or other social divisions, and commit to the use of dialogue and lawful institutional mechanisms to resolve disagreements during the period of the campaigns. I commit to promoting peaceful campaigns, respecting the will of the Nigerian people, and I will cooperate with the National Peace Committee to uphold this accord and facilitate dialogue when necessary. So help me God. So kindly append your signature, the date, and today you have made that commitment. Thank you very much. Please, a warm applause to all the candidates for the National Assembly and the governorship seats. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, members of staff, please kindly collect the copies, the signed copies, the pledges. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've been waiting for. We're done with the first part, and we're going to the second. The first for the governorship candidates and the National Assembly, the Senate, and members of the House of Representatives. And now, national chairman and presidential candidates. And to drive this process, please let us put hands together for the convener of the National Peace Committee, Most Reverend Dr. Matthew Hassan Kuka. Please, a round of applause. Let's put hands together for him. Thank you very much.
So we'll allow the candidates for the national Senate seats and governorship seats to take their seats as we call the presidential candidates and the national chairman forward. This will be done in alphabetical order. Thank you.
Chairman and candidates. No candidates, just chairman. Okay, so we'll just call you and then you come up with this so that we take it and make it snappy. So Accord Party, Action Alliance, Action Democratic Party,
so please, the national chairman and the presidential candidate should come forward. So once again, Accord, Action Alliance, the national chairman and the presidential candidate, followed by the presidential candidate of Action Democratic Party, ADP, and the national chairman. Next, the national chairman of Action People's Party, APP, and the presidential candidate should please come forward, followed by the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, AAC, and the national chairman. This will be followed by the presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, and the national chairman of the ADC. Kindly step forward to sign the document, followed by the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, and the national chairman. We'll also invite the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA, and the national candidate, or the national chairman, I beg your pardon, to step forward to sign the document. Followed by the national chairman of the Allied People's Movement, APM, and the presidential candidate. We'd also like to invite the presidential candidate of the Boot Party and the national chairman, followed by the presidential candidate of the Democratic Leadership Alliance, DLA, and the national chairman. Next is the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, LP, and the national chairman. Kindly step forward. Followed by the presidential candidate of the National Democratic Party, NDP, and the national chairman. We'd also like to invite the presidential candidate of the National Rescue Movement, NRM, and the national chairman. Please step forward to put pen to paper. Next, the presidential candidate of the Nigeria Democratic Congress, NDC, and the national chairman. We'd also like to invite the presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, and of the national chairman, as well as a presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, PRP, and the national chairman as well. Kindly step forward to sign this document.
And also to add, please, after signing, remain where you are, just still on the stage. After signing, just remain standing on the stage. Thank you so much. Chairman and candidates.
Next on the lineup is the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and the national chairman. Please step forward. And don't forget, right after the sign-in, we appeal to you that you stay on the podium. So for the presidential candidate and the national chairman, kindly stay. Do not leave after you've signed. Stay on the podium just in front of your document. So if there's any presidential candidate or national chairman that has left the podium, we ask that you please return to the podium. Next is the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, and the national chairman. Kindly step forward to sign your document. Followed by the presidential candidate of the Youth Party, YP, and the national chairman. It's also my pleasure to invite to the podium the presidential candidate of the Young Progressives Party, YPP, and the national chairman. Please step forward. And last but not least is the presidential candidate of Zenith Labour Party, ZLP, and the national chairman. Please step forward to sign the document. And please do not leave the podium when you're done with the sign-in. Kindly wait in front of your document. Thank you. This is a moment we have all been waiting for. The moment when every party and candidate says, in effect, that we may agree on how Nigeria should be run, we may agree on how we should move forward, but we agree that this nation, this great nation, must move forward in peace and harmony.
As the peace here. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the signing of the peace accord is not a mere ceremony. It's not just putting ink on paper, because the ink will definitely dry up, but it's about taking concrete action in ensuring that we build a more peaceful and humane society. And then, to crown out the signing of the peace accord, please permit us as we invite the INEC chairman to come forward as a witness to the signing of the peace accord. INEC chairman, please, Your Excellency, please come forward.
So please let's make welcome Professor Josh Amokwita, the Honorable Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, is a witness to this all-important signing. We'd also like to invite the Inspector General of Police, who is ably represented here today as well. So you can see we have all of the major stakeholders in Nigeria's electoral process, from the umpire, INEC, to the police that leads the security.
DIG Shehu Nadada. And then, the last but not the least, we invite as a witness and also to crown this up, the chairman of the National Peace Committee, in the person of His Excellency General Busalami Abubakar, GCFR, ably represented by His Excellency General Martin Luther Agwai, retired.
So the candidates, the chairman, have put pen to paper. We have INEC, we have the police, and the National Peace Committee as well, being witnesses to this. So the candidates, the political parties, and their supporters are in essence saying that the 2027 election and the build-up will be peaceful. We will focus on the issues. It will be an issue-based campaigning process. As they hit the campaign trail, they are promising Nigerians and the world that they will pay attention and focus only on the issues that the electorate want to listen to. That is the essence of today's signing. I want to thank the candidates and the chairman, and by extension the political parties, for making this all-important commitment. They have put pen to paper. They are gentlemen who will keep their words. Thank you very much.
I'll give you the pen.
Yes. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've been waiting for, it's happened already. Please, a round of applause for the candidates and chairman of political parties. Please, let's put our hands together for them. And together we watch them as they embrace themselves and shake the smile of peace. Peace begins with a smile, like someone would say. Please, let's begin to reach out, a handshake, and together we can say one Nigeria.
Oh yes, so what we're saying is, Accord should shake hands with Action Alliance.
Exactly.
Action Democratic Party should embrace the Action People's Party.
Together.
The AAC should give a very warm handshake.
And a smile.
The APC, of course we can see the AAC and the APC already shaking hands.
Yes.
We look forward to APGA embracing APM with a warm handshake as well. Please, Food Party, look for the Democratic Leadership Alliance, ELA, and shake hands with them.
And the AAC.
Oh yes.
Exactly.
So please let us ensure that we shake hands, embrace each other, and say we are gentlemen, gentlewomen, and we'll make sure that this election is the most peaceful that this great nation has witnessed. So please, all the candidates and party chairmen must shake hands with each other before we leave this venue today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And this is a reflection and representation of the fact that peace itself is something that we all live for, and no society would make progress without ensuring that peace itself is projected. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nigerians. And this is the moment we've been waiting for. Congratulations to each and every one of you. Congratulations. This is a representation of one Nigeria. Kayode, what do you think?
Absolutely. So please, absolutely shake hands. I'm seeing the candidates and chairman ZLP, YPP, YP, SDP shaking hands. This is what we want to see. And I love that the press is here to capture the pictures and the videos.
Sure.
So we can also show Nigerians that see the political actors smiling,
Sure.
shaking hands, embracing themselves.
Together.
So you, the supporters, do not have any reason to engage in violence, because your leaders are friends.
Sure.
They're shaking hands, they're smiling with each other. Thank you very much to our political actors.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And so we have just 2 more items before the event comes to an end. Kayode, I think the next should be. So shortly after this, we will be taking the vote of thanks. And the vote of thanks will be taken by Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka. So please come down as we try to orderly as we leave the podium. So please, let's make the way for the candidates and the chairman to step down from the podium. Thank you very much. Protocol, we ask that you please help coordinate the movement so it is seamless. Thank you very much. Please can we give way? Thank you so much. While we wait for the vote of thanks, and then the remarks by the President before the closing of the national anthem. Please a round of applause as we invite our Lord Bishop of Congo. Congratulations, please can we have our seats? Please take your seats. Thank you so much. You could see the ambience. You could feel peace in the air. You could see for yourself the oasis of peace. You could feel it, and that's what we really want to happen in Nigeria. Please let's take our seats as we have the vote of thanks. So to all our presidential candidates, the national chairman, all the candidates and guest presidents, we ask that you please take your seats so we can attend to the next item on our agenda. A very all-important one. So please, let's be seated so we can round up today's event. So to all our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We ask that you please be seated so we can move on with today's event. We will be listening in a moment to the convener of the National Peace Committee, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka. He has a very important message for us, so please we ask that we take our seats. We take our seats. We appreciate the camaraderie being displayed here today. So much excitement here. Absolutely, but please let's be seated. So we'll do a simple countdown from 10, and we ask that you be seated by the time we get to 1. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Please let's take our seats. 5, 4. Once again, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let's be seated. And to the cameramen, the photographers, and my colleagues in the Fourth Estate, let's clear the forecourt, please. Let's clear the forecourt so we can have a clear line of sight. 4, 3, 2. If you are still standing, we may see you as an enemy of peace. So if you're still standing right now, we may start to suspect you. And I believe no one wants to be an enemy of peace. Exactly. So please let's take our seats so we can continue with today's event, the National Peace Accord signing. The very first one ahead of the 2027 election. I can see some party members standing up. I know you are for peace. So please let us take your seats. Let's take our seats kindly. And just to add that there's a second signing. Yes. Which will come up later, much more later, before the elections. Absolutely. So get ready for that as well. Yes. Thank you very much. So it's now our pleasure to invite for the vote of thanks. This is a man that has dedicated his life not just to national progress, but to national peace as well. So please, with a warm applause, let's welcome the convener of the National Peace Committee, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, for his vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My remarks will be very brief because what I need to say has already been said. It just remains for me to, on behalf of the chairman of the National Peace Committee and the members of the Peace Committee, to thank everybody very warmly. One or two things that I think needs to be said. I don't know whether the Swiss embassy is still here, but they require very special mention because they knew a thing or two about this peace committee even before we Nigerians thought about it. I was invited to a meeting by the Swiss embassy, the Swiss ambassador then, whose name I no longer remember. And he talked, it seemed that they had already come up with an idea of an initiative of this nature. And we had a conversation, but nothing prepared me for what they had diplomatically been reflecting upon. They had a few names they had already suggested, but very little came out of that conversation. Surprisingly, my name was on the list, and the ambassador, I remember, turned to me and said, look, would you be in a position to assemble all these people we have listed here? We left the meeting, and as I said, very little came out of that. But I still remember, and I think I've told the story, under President Jonathan, there was what was called the Inter-Party Secretariat. I think it was chaired by Senator Ben Obi. I don't know whether it was a secretariat, but he was the special advisor to the president on inter-party affairs. A very strategic position at that time, which I think is still very much required, because Ben Obi brought quite a lot of professionalism, pushed the boundaries of dialogue and so on, and insisted that parties needed to be talking together. It was then that the Office for Inter-Party Affairs organized a very big conference that took place here in Abuja. I was invited to that conference. I was unable to, I happened to be in Abuja, but I couldn't make it to the conference. And I didn't know anybody would take notice. But at about 8 p.m. that evening, I received a call from Chivemeka Anyoku. And I thought he was going to scold me because he had chaired the meeting. I thought he was going to scold me for not being at the meeting. I apologized to him. And then he says to me, have you met Kofi Annan? And I said, I haven't met Kofi Annan. No, he said, do you know Kofi Annan? I said, I don't know Kofi Annan, but I know of Kofi Annan by reputation. And he said, well, he's asking after you and would like to meet you. And I said, well, I didn't think that was possible because I hadn't met the man before. I said, look, Kofi Annan is about to leave for the airport, but he's ready to wait if you're anywhere near the Hilton. And I said, well, I could get to the Hilton in 10 minutes. And I remember getting to the Hilton, and Kofi Annan embraced me quite warmly, and then said to me, look, I've just come from, you know what happened in Kenya? Because the elections in Kenya had gone badly wrong. I think about 1,000 or so people had lost their lives. It had never happened in Kenya before. And then, of course, as you know, there was a looming cloud around Nigeria based on two things. The first was that it was alleged that the Americans had predicted that Nigeria was going to fall apart. And then, of course, in 2011, tensions were heightened by the idea that the famous expression of the late President Muhammadu Buhari of blessed memory, who, after losing the election, had made the point that the next election it will be blood for the dog and blood for Birijini, Kerejini, and that it was going to be literally a war with no boundaries. That metaphor rang in the ears of so many Nigerians. And so there was quite a lot of understandable anxiety as to what will happen with the 2015 elections. Long story short, Kofi Annan's call was what led to the setting up of the National Peace Committee, because all the instructions he gave me was to assemble credible Nigerians together to be able to do this. The list, as you know, is pretty long. A good number of the members of the Peace Committee are, for all kinds of reasons, unable to be physically here. Quite a good number of them on grounds of old age. Some are not well. General Abdul Salam is out of the country. He has, I've seen 2 or 3 messages from him wondering whether all this has ended and ended very well. So he's with us in spirit. But I just want to make the point again that it's not the numbers. The Peace Committee has continued to do extraordinarily good work. That much I can say. We were not set up to monitor elections and make sure that elections are. We were set up to encourage Nigerians. And I want to just use 2 examples, if you indulge me. Many of us are convinced, and I've had people say to me, are we really doing anything? Do people just sign a card and go home? The governor of Ekiti, I happened to have met him, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And as the chairman of INEC would testify, the elections in Ekiti went very, very well and very smooth. But he said to me, when you people came to Ekiti, and we had to sign, and I had to sign that peace committee, we the members who were in Ekiti remembered that even right up to the eve of the signing of the peace accord, there had been a lot of bloodshed. But he said, when I signed, put my signature to that, I decided to take it seriously. So seriously that when we went back to Ekiti before the elections, Asebe, who made the beautiful presentation, they had made a similar presentation and indicated that the staff of the Kuka Center that had been in Ekiti for almost 5 weeks had found only two incidents of violence. And he said, what I have done, and I think this is what I encourage our politicians to do, because violence is directly related to the unresolved issues among political competitors. He said to me, I had gone out of my way to make peace with all the political enemies of my predecessor, because he had also encouraged me to do so. To the point that at the last elections in Ekiti, literally every politician was literally behind the governor. So I make this point because a lot of poor people continue to die for issues that politicians have not been able to resolve. The second point is what has happened in Osun, and I want to congratulate the governor. But also, I think we can learn a lesson from the way that Governor Adeleke conducted himself. Let me put it that way. I've known him for quite some time. I got his number. I called him not once, not twice. He never answered my phone and didn't return my phone. But after we signed the peace accord in Osun, from then till Friday, there was hardly any day the governor was not on the phone to me, reporting the incidents of violence. And the good news here, and I want you to take this news to the Inspector General of Police. We had a triangular conversation. Governor Adeleke will call to report these incidents, and I will call the Inspector General of Police, who was kind enough to constantly answer my phone. He said, look, they have arrested my secretary to government. I called IG. The next day, the secretary to government was released. He said, they have arrested 87 people from Ekiti. They brought them to Abuja. I called the Inspector of Police. He responded. As he kept making these accusations, I kept passing the information to the Inspector General of Police. These triangular conversations largely led to the encouragement, because I also kept encouraging the governor, continue, complain, and continue. And I think it is to be, the lesson we learn here is that the crying for help is important. But also, we need the institutions of state to be able to respond to those cries. So I really just want to congratulate the people of Ekiti, and also want to congratulate the Inspector General of Police. But over and above that, many of us have found it very comfortable to criticize institutions of government, and they deserve criticism. But this is our country. We are not going anywhere. It is for us to build. All the members of the Peace Committee, none of them has received a single penny, nor has has anybody asked for a single penny. This work is being done for free. You saw General Abdul Salam come into this hall and other places with a walking stick. So I just want to thank the members of the Peace Committee. And as you know, we were supposed to have gone home after the 2015 elections. But when we came back, when we met with President Jonathan, I met with President Buhari, I met with the Senate President, I met with the Speaker, I met with the different political parties and the media. Everybody said, no, the Peace Committee cannot go anywhere. But the lesson we learned here is that the President, I remember President Buhari was so excited that he said the Peace Committee must not go anywhere. And he turned to Babachir, who was the secretary to government, he said, please find them an office immediately. Get the peace committee a permanent office. But when we went back and had conversation, we decided we will not take an office from government. And I think why the peace committee has remained, even if it is one person or two people, why we have remained credible is because we are not being funded by the government. And this is why I would like to thank the European Union, because they have stepped in and they have been responsible. And they have followed us every step of the way. So everything we have achieved today would probably not have been possible without the support of the European Union. Your Excellency, I want to please beg you to convey our appreciation and gratitude, and that we really appreciate this encouragement. Lastly, I want to thank my staff at the Kuka Center. And I wish they were all here, because if they were here, I'll ask all of them to come out. They've done extraordinarily good work under the leadership of Father Atta Barkindo. And with them, you can go to sleep. The average age of the staff of the Kuka Center is 25 or 27. They're doing exceptionally good work. And I'm confident that the lessons they are learning here will make them not only better citizens, but better politicians. So finally, I commit myself, and I think we all must commit ourselves to certain principles, that Nigeria has a date with destiny. And that despite the violence, despite the kidnapping, despite the setback, Nigeria's greatness will still be achieved in our lifetime. The Nigerian politicians believe, there are many of them who believe, as one of our singers has said, they believe that they will be rich till they die. But we ordinary people must wear face masks, no matter the matter. We also are entitled to a good life. So, once again, Mr. President, ably represented by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, Senate President, Speaker, members of the National Assembly, governors, and everybody who is here, I want on behalf of all of us to say how very grateful we are. The media, we thank you for the great work you continue to do, and we ask Almighty God to bless you. So for all of us who have been here, I'm sure you have enjoyed the ambience of this hall. When a friend of mine came from Nigeria to visit me, I was a student in London. We entered the underground train, and we bought what they call the all-day pass. That was, we could go to anywhere we wanted. On our way back home, my friend said, this train is not enough. These £2 we paid. And he said, okay, he wanted to keep going around London. He didn't know where he was going. He just kept going around the train, because he said he must follow this train until sunset. Then he would have made his money. So I believe that, given how much we paid to enter this hall, it has been worthwhile. And I'm sure you have stayed here and enjoyed the air condition. By the time you go back home, there may be no NEPA. But we would like to thank all those who made this place possible. Our daughter, Ms. Komolafe, came back from London yesterday. And it is a miracle that she and her team were able to put together what we have here today. Because, yes, as of yesterday, you wouldn't have recognized this hall. So I really want to personally thank her and thank the European Union for linking her up with us. Once again, I thank you, and I ask Almighty God to bless all of us. Long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Another round of applause for His Lordship. Thank you so much, my Lord Bishop. Thank you to the National Peace Committee for the sacrifice that we continue to make. And I thought we are supposed to clap for my colleague. My colleagues, when the Bishop, please, let's put hands together for the Kuka Center, the staff of the Kuka Center. Thank you so much. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the time is now for us to say thank you for coming. And for the remarks taken from the office, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, we're talking about the remarks by the President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Please, let's make welcome Senator George Akume, CON, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. A round of applause, please. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I stand proxy for His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. For exigency of office is not here with us. Permit me to read his statement to you this evening. His Excellency Abdulsalami Abubakar, GCFR, former head of state, chairman MPC, ably represented by General Agwai, former chief of defense staff, the President of the Senate, ably represented by the Deputy President of the Senate, His Excellency Senator Barrow, Speaker, Dr. Tajuddin Abbas, ably represented, the Inspector General of Police, ably represented by the DIG Operations, the convener, His Lordship Bishop Hassan Kuka, the Chairman INEC, Professor Amupiton, SAN, Chairman of political parties here present, presidential candidates, members of the diplomatic corps, party elders, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here today to take part in this significant event, which precedes the start of the political campaign ahead of the January and February 2027 general elections. I thank members of the National Peace Committee, NPC, especially our former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, the Sultan of Sokoto, and Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka for convening this important occasion. Our nation owes the NPC a debt of gratitude for your steadfastness since 2014 in promoting peace accords that commit political parties and candidates to run non-violent, issue-based campaigns during national and off-cycle state elections. Since 1999, when our country returned to democratic governance, under the stewardship of General Abdulsalami Abubakar and his team, every election period has brought its share of anxiety because of the nature of our politics and the intense competition for power by political actors. While politics and the contest for power can be loud and often create tension and disagreement among politicians, we must acknowledge the progress we have made in our electoral process in terms of transparency and election management by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. With the aid of technology, INEC has recorded remarkable improvement in every election cycle. The introduction of the permanent voters card and BVS, an electronic card reader, has eliminated voting manipulation, ballot stuffing, and snatching at polling units. These improvements have restored power to the voters who are not sure that their vote will count. Politicians are now more accountable to the people because votes count. These polls have also demonstrated our capacity as a people to conduct ourselves with maturity and restraint. Between October 2025 and August 15, 2026, we witnessed 3 off-season polls in Anambra, Ekiti, and Osun states. Different parties won them, and local and foreign observers described them as free, credible, and transparent. When the process and outcome are manifestly transparent we see less post-election litigation in our courts. We have gathered today to commit ourselves to a peaceful and transparent electoral process. Signing this peace accord is a solemn pledge to the Nigerian people that we, as leaders, will put the nation's interest above personal or partisan ambitions. I call on all Nigerians, civil society organizations, our foreign partners, and the media to join us in deepening and building a stronger, more vibrant, democratic society. Democracy is not just about periodic elections that get politicians into government positions. Democracy is about how citizens participate in the affairs of their nation, build trust in public institutions, engage civically, and work together for good governance and a more just and equitable society. In the spirit of the accord we have just signed, we must conduct ourselves in ways that strengthen, not tear, the fabric of our society. It is natural during campaigns to disagree as opponents and advocate competing governing visions for our country. We may exchange occasional political jabs, but as members of the same household, the same national family, we must never resort to divisive or primordial sentiments of ethnicity or religion as tools for seeking power. Let us campaign on superior ideas. Let us debate issues and promote the best policies to expand opportunities for our people and accelerate Nigeria's journey from a developing nation to a first world country. As the campaign season kicks off, I commit myself and my party, the All Progressives Congress, to the tenets of this accord. Our party rejects violence, hate speech, the spread of misinformation, including through artificial intelligence, and all forms of incitement, especially via social media. We are committed to peaceful, transparent elections that will strengthen political stability, social harmony, economic progress, and our nation's prosperity. I encourage other political parties and political actors to do the same. Let us remember that elections are not a do-or-die affair. We are partners in the project of nation building. Win or lose, our country, Nigeria, must be the ultimate winner. God bless you all, and may God continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you all.
One more time, a warm applause to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, representing the President. Shall we please rise for the national anthem?
At the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribes of medieval, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians old and proud to serve a sovereign motherland.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the first signing of the National Peace Accord by all political parties and the candidates contesting the 2027 general elections.
Thank you very much.
Well, there we have it. We have been watching the first signing of the National Peace Accord to commit political parties and candidates to issues-based campaign ahead of the 2027 general elections.
This is Channels Television. You've been watching our coverage of the National Peace Accord Summit, organized by the National Peace Committee and supported by the Kuka Center. This brings us to the end of the broadcast. We now return to the rest of our programming for the day.
You've been watching a live Channels Television event.
Welcome to the world today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. Iran says it will not surrender as it claims America is now begging to negotiate with them. UK Prime Minister Andy Burnham reaffirms country's total support for Ukraine. Plus, school shooting leaves 2 students dead, sparking calls for tighter safeguards in the Philippines. Let's begin the world today. We begin with developing stories in the Middle East as Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says the U.S. objective in the war is to force Iran to surrender, but claims that Tehran will not surrender. In his words, he says America is now begging to negotiate with them according to their conditions, adding that the Memorandum of Understanding signed with the United States contained 13 provisions in Iran's favor and 1 in the U.S. favor. He accused Israel of doing everything it can to sabotage the agreement and prevent its implementation, and further stressed that Iran has won the war and it also won in diplomacy while forcing the enemy to accept its conditions. Meanwhile, Qatar's foreign ministry says countries mediating between Iran and the U.S. are waiting for Iran and Oman to announce an expected agreement on transit through the Strait of Hormuz before pushing Washington and Tehran to resume negotiations aimed at ending their war. Earlier, the UK Maritime Trade Operations reported a vessel transiting the Strait of Hormuz suffered engine room damage and a crew member was injured after the vessel was struck by an unknown projectile. U.S. President Donald Trump also shared an image on his Truth Social account, proclaiming the Strait of Hormuz as new U.S. territory. In response, Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Kazim Garibabadi called Trump's claim a delusion and warned that it would either be corrected or Iran would correct it. Staying in the Middle East, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Kalibaf has warned the Strait of Hormuz will stay shut until Washington delivers on its commitments under the June Memorandum of Understanding. Kalibaf, who served as Iran's top negotiator in previous talks, also accused Washington of trying to squeeze Iran economically and fracture the country from within. The U.S.-Iran memorandum, mediated by Pakistan and Qatar and agreed in June, opened the way for a ceasefire and further negotiations towards a final deal. Talks have since ground to a halt, with the two sides clashing over maritime security, passage through the Strait of Hormuz, and accusations the agreement has been violated.
هدف قرار دهد. ایران متحد، مقتدر و هوشیار است.
Away from the Middle East to the UK now, Prime Minister Andy Burnham says Britain will continue to support Ukraine 100%. It comes after Russia accused the UK of deliberately opting for an escalation of the Ukraine crisis following confirmation that British-made drones were used in recent strikes on military and industrial targets in Moscow. In a statement, the Russian embassy in the UK said London's actions would inevitably carry consequences for which it will have to answer, adding that the deeper its involvement in the conflict, the higher the price it will pay. Recently, Ukraine stepped up attacks on Moscow and other targets deep inside Russia particularly targeting oil refineries and logistics sites operated by Wildberries, a major Russian online retailer. The UK Ministry of Defence says Britain stands shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine, stressing that Russia should be in no doubt about the UK's government involvement to stand against Russian aggression in Ukraine. We're in Greece now, where a young British couple and their pilot have been killed in a helicopter crash on the island of Siphonos. According to Greek police, the victims, identified as Alexander Cromi and Marie Ebert, were on their honeymoon when the private helicopter crashed just meters from a landing pad, killing all 3 people on board. The couple is said to have taken the helicopter from the village of Marco Polo near Athens to the popular holiday island. In the meantime, an investigation to determine the cause of the crash is underway.